Ranrarik leaned against the curving quartzite bulwark of the interspatial watchtower on Altatherur, his keen eyes fixed upon the vastness beyond the transparent dome where 10,000 suns blazed like cold white diamonds in the velvet sea. The void was a chalice of glittering fire, beautiful and implacable, and the lean commander of the Stellar Legion felt the ancient thrill shake his nerves, the same exultant awe that men had known when they first lifted sail on Terra's oceans 1,000,000 years. Beside him, Dal Naratal, dark-haired, her eyes the green of Altatherur's twin seasbent over a bank of ghostly screens. Patterns of light rippled like living auroras across her brow. "The pulse interval is shortening again, Ran," she said, her voice low but vibrant with tension. "If the extrapolated curve holds, the focal nexus will breach normal space within a day." "A day," Ran muttered. "That leaves us scarcely hours to rouse the Council, analyze the singularity signature, and mount a response." "A response?" Dal Nara's lips curved in an ironic smile that did not reach her eyes. "Against energies that distort Einsteinian constants like vapor? Against a phenomenon whose locus dances through 4 dimensions like a mad firefly? What manner of response, Ran?" "The Legion does not surrender to the unknown," he answered simply. He turned, the argent light from the starfield, limning his aquiline features. "We'll learn its name, its purpose, and, if it hungers for the life of worlds, we'll teach it to fear ours." A brisk metallic footfall rang upon the platform. Hurus Hol strode into the dome, looming as an ebon figure in his formal cuirass of obsidian alloy. His mighty shoulders bent slightly beneath the weight of redundant field generators, but his eyes were bright with that Nero-fanatical flame the veterans of the Titanian Wars still carried. Hurus had been mentor and sometime tormentor to Ran in the crucible of command, and even now he addressed his former pupil with brusque affection. "You've seen the new readings?" he barked, without preamble. "I have." Ran gestured toward the primary holograph, where a spiraling blossom of violet stood against the grainy wash of spiral arm coordinates. "The incursion front is no longer theoretical." Hurus Hol growled. "Tell that to the Council technocrats. They drown in committee while the cosmos twists." "Then we do not wait," Ran said. He keyed a crystal stud on his gauntlet. Somewhere far below, in Altatherur's subterranean bays, klaxons wailed, and the cold thunder of fusion banks rumbled to life. "I've ordered the star spears readied." Dal Nara looked up sharply. "Ran, the spear flotilla is the Legion's sword, but against an entity that warps space-time." "We need reconnaissance," Ran interrupted. "And if need be, we need a blade to strike." A deeper note crept into the klaxons, a warning reserved for existential alerts. Hurus Hol smiled a savage, almost joyous expression. "That's the call I know. By the galaxy's youth, you haven't forgotten how to gamble." Ran answered that grim smile. "It is no gamble, old warrior. It's necessity." The flagship Oriflamme, newest scion of the Legion's dreadnoughts, lunged from Altatherur's equatorial ring like a living shard of lightning. 30 kilometers of ceramite and gravmesh, its spearing prow encased a singularity pinion that drank momentum from inertial substrate and spat it outward in a lens jet of blue-white flare. Swarms of cruiser escorts folded around her like armored swallows, and somewhere within that lethal constellation, Ranrarik stood upon the command dais that rose above the vast bridge tiers. "Jump approaching," intoned the helmsman, a thin bioengineered Polarian, whose translucent skin shimmered with symbiotic nanites. "Coordinates, locked to last pulse centroid." Ran nodded. "Engage metafold drive. Full delta shift." The stars in the viewsphere elongated into abrupt spears, then smeared into a marbled kaleidoscope as the Oriflamme plunged through the metafold. Consciousness fluttered on the edge of disassociation, but training kept the crew's minds tethered. A heartbeat later, the ship erupted into normal space yet. What sprawled before them was not the calm ocean of the galaxy, but a storm of cosmic incongruity. A titanic rift yawned across the dark wound in reality, rimmed by luminous fissures of raw hyperspatial lightning. Through that aperture churned cyclopean shapes, silhouettes like tangled islands in some mad sea, drifting yet purposeful. Energies howled across the electromagnetic spectrum, a symphony of shrieking ghosts. Sensors wailed. Dal Nara's voice trembled through the comm grid. Ranthie's massive-hyperdense conglomerations on an order. She broke off. There are suns inside that rift, Ran. Whole suns, torn free. Ran felt the words strike like hammer blows. The shapes out there, those drifting islands, were star systems, uprooted by a force beyond comprehension, spiraling toward the heart of an unseen vortex. Helm, trajectory analysis, Ran commanded. Where does that siphon lead? The Polarian hesitated. Singularity vector terminates outside charted spacefar. Outside the constants become mathematically unstable. If these stars continue along that curve, they will converge, possibly collide, in a matter-annihilating event. A cosmic catastrophe indeed enough to devour a quadrant in entropy's fiery maw. Hurushol's voice boomed across the bridge, grim amusement masking wonder. Star Stealers again, Ran? History repeats with a vengeance. Ran's jaw tightened at that bitter title. Centuries ago, the first Star Stealer crisis had nearly sundered civilization, but those marauders had merely towed suns with titanic engines. This was something more terrible, the theft of whole cosmic neighborhoods by axes of power the mind could scarcely name. Launch probe drones, Ran ordered. Full spectrum. Find me the Nexus core. Miniature craft burst from the dreadnought's bays, silver sparks diving into the screaming gulf. Ran watched their telemetry cascade. Gravitic gradients, neutrino winds, spectra of freed starfires. Each second the data grew more deranged. Dal Nara's hands flew over cryptic runes. This cannot be natural, Ran. The coherency patterns suggest orchestration signal modulations buried in the flux. Intelligence, Ran breathed. An alien hand. A drone feed blossomed on the sphere. In the distance, beyond the rift's contorted maw, floated a structure. Concentric rings of obsidian metal, kilometers across. Revolving around a central void like a titanic gyroscope. Energies lanced between the rings in spears of ultraviolet fire. There, Hurushol growled. That forge is the culprit. Signal tight beam to the flotilla, Ran said. All ships. Advance with shield lattices fully resonant. Prepare for contact. The fleet arrowed into the rift. Space buckled, engines groaned. Unseen tides tugged upon the hulls with the hunger of 1 billion gravities. Yet, the star spears pressed onward. And soon the alien construct loomed ahead like a wheel of night, blotting the tortured starlight. Suddenly space blossomed with light. Beams of coherent entropy ripped from the rim, stabbing at the advancing vessels. Cruisers reeled, hulls atomizing in violet bursts. The Oriflamme shuddered beneath an invisible hammer. Return fire, Hurus bellowed. The dreadnought's forward lances spoke superaphotonic bolts that bored through vacuum like incandescent drills. They struck the construct, flaying plates of black metal into vapor. But the structure endured. Shields draining, Dal warned. These beams invert baryonic coherence. They unweave matter. Ran's mind raced. Target the junction nodal at the axis convergence there. He pointed at a pulsating hub where the energy streams braided. Concentrate fire! The fleet's surviving warships pivoted, lances converging. For a frozen instant, space became a furnace, and the ring's central node imploded. The beams died. Shockwaves rippled through the rift, tearing at the fissure's edges. But triumph was fleeting. In the heart of the broken gyroscope, something awoke. A swarm of crystalline polyhedra, each a mile wide, blossomed like shards of a shattered prism and hurled themselves toward the Legion ships. They moved with impossible acceleration, weaving patterns that defied Newton and sanity. Evasive, Ran cried. Chaos erupted ships, tumbling, drives screaming. A cruiser split as a polyhedron impacted its core, detonating its reactors. Another vessel vanished, unmade by a touch of alien geometry. On the bridge, alarms keened. They phasm shift across dimensional membranes. Dal gasped. Our weapons cannot lock. HEIRS Hull slammed a gauntleted fist into a console. Then we rammed them. Yet Rand felt the battle's tide turning to hopelessness. If they remained, the fleet would die, and the galaxy would lose its first warning. Recall all vessels, he ordered. Plot retreat vector out of the rift. Ran! HEIRS protested. We need knowledge, not martyrdom, Rand said fiercely. The order went out. Surviving ships pivoted, drives flaring. The polyhedra pursued, but a scatteroburst of gravitic mines slowed them. The oriflamme led the battered flotilla through the buckling threshold. Reality shuddered. Then they burst once more into the star-strewn quietude of normal space. But quiet it was not. Emergency beacons flared from systems within 300 light-years. The cosmic theft had ruptured trade lanes, dragged suns from their cradles, kindled novas where orbits tore. The galaxy was bleeding. Altatherur's council chamber reeked of ozone and fear. Holowada delegates flickered around the oval amphitheater, representatives from 100 worlds, faces haggard. At the central dais, Ran, Dal, and HEIRS stood beneath a cyclone of projected data. And so, Rand concluded, we confront a power capable of harvesting star systems for fuel or a weapon. We must assume the worst. A rotund senator from Sirius rose. Commander Rarick? Your plan? Rand straightened. We propose an expedition into the rift's far terminus to locate the intelligence directing this atrocity. A strike may disable the mechanism. The Siran scowled. Suicide. HEIRS Hull's laugh cracked like cannon fire. Fortify against what? An enemy that drags suns like beads? Your bastions would be candle flames before a hurricane. An aged Martian Archon leaned forward. Lieutenant Nara, earlier data indicated modulation signals embedded in the energy flux. Could they be communication? Dal answered. Possibly. If we decode them, we might understand motive, even negotiate. Rand regarded her. You would parley with Star Thieves? I would seek any path that spares 1 billion lives, she replied. The chairwoman spoke. Commander Rarick, you and your team are commissioned. Assemble a task force. The fate of the Commonwealth rests upon you. In the days that followed, Altatherur became a forge of war and wonder. Engine yards birthed new weapons, graviton spears, neutrino katanas, and brainchild of Dal Naratha Sayu Resonator, a crystalline matrix attuned to consciousness frequencies. If the alien minds could be reached, the resonator would be the voice. On the dawn of departure, Rand stood upon a balcony overlooking the docks. The oriflamme, reborn, gleamed like a shard of dawn. Dal approached. Fleet ready, she said softly. He watched the horizon where twin suns kindled rose and topaz fires. I was remembering the myth of Proteus, he said, a god that changed shape to elude inquiry. I fear we chase such a god. Dal's hand brushed his. Proteus could be bound by persistence and courage. We possess both. HEIRS Hull barged onto the balcony. Romance later, assemble now. The task force leapt into the void, following a chain of gravitational wounds. They traversed gulfs where ancient quasars glimmered like dying candles, crossed nebular skulls where lost civilizations had carved mausoleums into moons, skirted dark clusters whose gravity wells whispered, oblivion. Each jump pushed them beyond the cartographer's reach. At intervals they discovered horrors, a planet sagging in molten agony as tidal stresses ripped its crust, another world where oceans boiled under a too-close sun, cities of crystal flooded, inhabitants fossilized mid-flight. Rand's heart hardened. During the 4th week time measured in relativities, the task force intercepted a broadcast, a thrumming polytonal chord that resonated in bones. Dal and the savants fed it through the Sayo resonator. At last Dal emerged, pale. It is lamentation for entropy. They harvest stellar energy to outlast the universe's heat death. Rand frowned. A civilization seeking immortality at the expense of all others. Number 4. HEIRS snorted. Child or Titan? It wields destruction. Let philosophy wait. The trail ended at intergalactic Darka realm between clusters. Here, the stolen suns swarmed like fireflies, a globe of captive stars rotating around a central engine. The Star Vault. The vault glowed with terrible grandeur. Ribbons of force tethered each star, siphoning plasma into colossal reservoirs. Orbiting the vault, a fleet of alien craft-sleek crescents of obsidian. Ran called battle stations. HEIRS marshaled legionaries. Dal moved to the Sio resonator chamber. Then, over the void, a voice spoke no words, but thoughts broadcast into every mind. Leave. The harvest is ordained. Do not oppose the cosmic conservators. Ran answered. Return the suns. Life has claim. Halt, or we resist. The voice replied sorrowful. Survival demands sacrifice. Depart. Alarms shrieked alien crescents launched. Space erupted in fury. The battle dwarfed even Legion chronicles. Alien crescents moved like thoughts, firing weapons that twisted energy into vortices. Legion destroyers countered with graviton spears and neutrino bursts. Ships blossomed into novas, their dying fires dwarfed by the imprisoned stars nearby. Ran guided the Oriflamme in a battering dance. HEIRS Hull led boarding pods. Dal, anchored to the resonator, grappled with alien consciousness. Images flooded them. A dying galaxy. A race of beings watching their heavens dim, forging engines to gather light across space-time. Ran's breath caught. They are refugees, he murmured. Dal winced. Yes, but they create the night for others. HEIRS slammed his fist. Pity later. Action now. Alarms. An alien vessel locked tractor nodes onto the Oriflamme, dragging her toward the vault's corona. Ran met HEIRS's gaze. Prepare scuttle charges. We cannot let the flagship be captured. Evacuate non-essential crew, HEIRS said. Then we ram the vault. Ran nodded. Dal struggled upright. I stay, she whispered. He took her hand, resolve flaring. Evacuation pods streaked from the Oriflamme. HEIRS calibrated the singularity pinion to overload. The alien flagship's tractor grip dragged them into the vault's corona furnace of stolen star fury. Legion escorts harried the enemy, buying time. The universe narrowed to a brutal trajectory. Dal sat at the console, mind reaching once more. She sent a final clean image of life's tapestry so the lightbearer might know what it burned. HEIRS shouted. Pinion at threshold. Ran pressed the final command. For the galaxy. A low hum rose collapsing infinities. The Oriflamme's core blazed. The detonation was not an explosion, but an unmaking. A silent flowering of inverted space blossomed within the vault. Tractor beams snapped. Alien crescents reeled. In the heart of that white eclipse, Ran felt Dal's hand tighten thin. A flash of searing brilliance erased sight and sound. Their white blindness, and then nothing. And yet consciousness did not wholly cease. Ranrarak drifted in a gulf beyond darkness, a null zone where even memory dissolved. Somewhere, impossibly distant, a heartbeat echoed slow, ponderous. With each throb, fragments returned. The vault. The blaze. Dal's hand in his. He reached for that memory, like a drowning man reaching for light. Sight came, not through eyes but through inner sense. He beheld a sphere of ink spangled with dim pinpoints, the stolen suns, hanging in a void whose curvature felt wrong. Between them coiled translucent filaments, the torn force ribbons of the conservators. Nearby floated HEIRS Hull and shattered wreckage of Legion and alien craft, all suspended in the same medium. And there Dal, haloed by rosegold aura. Ran pushed through the viscous dark, fingers brushing hers. A spark leapt mind to mind. Ran. Alive? Yes. We linger in the singularity's throata pocket of decaying space. Her thought trembled. The Lightbearer is here. He turned. The lattice of crystalline polyhedra hovered, cracked, and leaking motes of memory. A faint voice brushed them. "Why have you done this thing?" "Because life must share the fire." Ran and Dal answered together. "We feared the long night. So we gathered fuel." "At the cost of other songs," Dal replied. The entity pulsed with regret. "We are failing. The vault is lost. The stars will scatter. If released unchecked, they would erupt as novas." Dal entreated, "Help us guide them home." After long silence, shards detached, reassembling into a small polyhedron before them. "Take the map of gravities. Guide them. And forgive us." The great lattice shattered, dissolving into glitter. HEIRS' hull stirred. "Commander, where are we?" "On the edge of rebirth," Ran said, clasping the glowing map. Lines of force unfolded, ensnaring the drifting suns, pulling them into ordered dance. But the pocket destabilized pockets of oblivion blooming. Dal's eyes met his. "We must escape before it collapses." Among the debris drifted an intact auxiliary cutter. Responding to remote command, its drives flickered. HEIRS propelled himself toward it, rallying survivors. As Ran guided Dal through the hatch, he vowed, "We will see this through." The cutter bucked as reality seized, it spatted into the cold clarity of true space. Alarms wailed, but stars shone steady outside. The map fragment hovered above the console, casting beams that traced routes across the galactic arm. Dal sagged into a seat, her smile weary yet bright. "Phase 1 complete. Now we shepherd suns." Ran clasped her shoulder. "And guard against those who would steal them anew." HEIRS barked a laugh. "Then set course, Commander. Dawn won't wait." The cutter angled toward a shimmering ribbon of gravity. Behind them, in the collapsing pocket, the remnants of a god faded, and the stolen suns began their long journey home. Before the engines flared, Ran opened fleet-wide comms. Across the scattered auxiliaries, weary crews straightened at the sound of his voice. "Legion," he said. "Today we broke the furnace that would have fed on stars. Tomorrow we become custodians of those same fires. Our losses are bitter, but the living still carry duty and hope. Rally at coordinate Helix 00. There we assemble a new spear, honed not only for war but for guardianship. Let the galaxy see that from ruin can rise resolve." A chorus of acknowledgments answered. Guttural Titanian tones, trilling Venusian, the metallic rasp of Martian veterans. In each voice, Ran heard the pulse of a civilization refusing dusk. He closed the channel, met Dal's gaze, and saw the reflection of 1,000 sunrise roads in her eyes. "Helm," he ordered softly. "Take us to Helix 0. The cutter leapt forward, streaking into the void where dawn waited to be forged. And the void received them with a hush like the breath before a storm. A single auxiliary cutter, little more than a spindle-hulled courier lashed to overattack's drive coils, limped through the nebular shoals that marked the frontier of known space. Its wounded generators throbbed like failing hearts, scattering fitful auroras across the hull. Yet aboard that fragile vessel burned a resolve fiercer than any sun. Ron Rarak stood upon the cramped bridge. Boots braced to counter the irregular judder of misaligned gyros. The crystal map of gravities hovered at shoulder height, radiating pale vectors that swirled and reignited as the stars drifted in parallax through the forward viewplate. Within those glimmering threads lay the salvation or ruin of half a galaxy. Dalnara sat cross-legged below the map, her brow beaded with perspiration as she tuned the psi resonator that now formed a delicate circlet around her temples. Each filament of the device quivered to her neural cadence, translating subconscious insight into navigational guidance no computer could match. Every so often she would gasp, teeth clenched, as the map's alien harmonics flooded her senses with eddies of space-time too vast for human comprehension. But always she returned, eyes blazing emerald once more. HEIRS' hull occupied the weapons console, though the cutter possessed scant armament beyond 2 pulse cannons and a rack of superheated flechettes. His massive form seemed squeezed into the seat like a battle titan into a child's chair. yet his fingers danced upon the controls with surprising delicacy. A veteran of 3 collapsers and a dozen immortal sieges, HEIRS possessed a rare calm in crisis. But Rand saw the grave tension in the older man's jaw. He, too, knew how thin a filament now tethered their fate. "Next node approaches," Dal whispered, voice hoarse. "Prepare for quantum shear." Rand's reply was a nod. "Helm throttle to fractional arc. Vector us in." The cutter nosed toward the coordinates indicated by the map. An unremarkable patch of dark interstellar medium. Yet, as they closed, space seemed to warp ripples of lensing distorting the starlight. Then, with a lurch that rattled every strut, a hidden door irised open in the universe. A vortex of prismatic fire, silent and immense. "Gravo sluice," HEIRS muttered. So that's how they herded the sun's folded corridors masked in nully space. "Exactly," Dal breathed. "We cannot escort the stolen stars home the same way we entered our drives would crumble. But if we reclaves these corridors, we can guide them along low-energy gradients all the way into the Perseid arm." Rand's eyes glittered. "A shepherd's path!" He stabbed commands. The cutter's bow projectors flared, weaving a lattice of grav pulses that coaxed the vortex wider, smoothing its jagged event horizon. "Field stable barely," HEIRS reported. "Hold her steady, or we'll smear ourselves across a few million parsecs." With a final glance at his companions, Rand plunged them through. A sense of inversion, a horrible inside-out twist, seized them, then the cutter burst into a region of churning iridescence, as though they rode the heart of a cosmic whirlpool. Rivers of energized plasma roared in translucent streams, each stream a tendril tugging at a captured star, hundreds of light-years distant. Here and there globes of flamelesser suns robbed from remote constellations bobbed like luminous buoys upon invisible tides. Dal's breath caught. So many. The conservators stripped entire dwarf clusters. "We'll see them home," Rand vowed, though the enormity of the task threatened to crush his spirit. "But first we must reach Helix 0. Helix Eque Zero, a clandestine outpost of the Stellar Legion, orbited a rogue planet hidden deep within the trailing void. Once a mere listening post, it had become their rally point, the anvil upon which new plans would be forged. Yet as the cutter emerged from the corridor, Rand felt dread coil in his gut. The outpost should have shone with beacon codes and defensive screens. Instead, its docking spires floated like broken bones around the barren planet. Scorched hull plates drifted in silent testament. Vaporized alloys gleamed like frozen blood. No transmissions pulsed across the ether only. A low static hiss like the dying breath of giants. "By the moons of Phobos," HEIRS whispered. "Someone reached Helix 0 before us." Rand scanned the debris. The fracture patterns clean, mathematical spoke of weapons unknown to Legion arsenals. And more. Among the wreckage glinted black shards of alien crescents, remnants of conservator craft. "They followed the survivors," Dal said, voice bleak. "Tracked our emergency beacons." "But who finished the battle?" HEIRS growled. "The carnage's mutual, those crescents died too." Rand's answer came unbidden. "Another force is in play." As if summoned by his words, a cold, metallic voice sliced through comm channels. "Unidentified vessel. You trespass in quarantine sector Theta. Identify and stand by for boarding." The cutter's holoplate blossomed with the image of a shipno, an angular fortress looming from the shadowed side of the rogue planet. It was unlike any design of the Legion. Jagged planes of matta-white armor, runic glyphs pulsing icy blue along its ribs. Gunports yawned like abyssal maws. Dal's eyes widened. "I know that motif. The Argæsh dominion lost beyond the Centauri rift centuries ago. Their myths claimed they mastered null matter phase weaponry." HEIRS flexed his fists. "Looks like more than myth." Rand toggled a narrow we-beam response. "This is Commander Ran Rarak of the Stellar Legion. Helix 00 was under Commonwealth jurisdiction. Your presence here is a breach of accords." Static crackled. Then the voice returned, flat and unemotional. The sovereign Argæsh Dominion recognizes no accords with entropy spawn. You carry technology of the harrowed ones. Surrender it, and we may spare your flesh for evaluation. Regis 7. Regis. To com.or. HEIRS barked a laugh. I'll show them evaluation, all right. Ran muted the channel. Options? Run? Dal suggested. In this wreck of a cutter? HEIRS scoffed. We'd evaporate under their first salvo. Then we fight, Ran said. But not blindly, Dal. Can you mask the map's emissions? She adjusted settings. The pale vectors shrank, dimming. Done. Helm drift us toward the largest debris field. Use thruster puffs only. We'll look like salvage. HEIRS' smile was grim. Ambush, then. They slid into the graveyard of broken spires. The Dominion fortress advanced, flanked by 3 Nephilim escorts. Energy halos crackled along their Regis-phase lances, powering up. Ran watched the tactical schematic. They'll scan for heat blooms. Once they're within 10 clicks, we ignite the drive burst and angle off their belly. A fresh alarm trilled. Dal swore. They're deploying drones thousands, netting the entire zone. On the hollow, a lattice of silver motes expanded like a blooming iron flower. Escape corridors vanished. We'll never outsprint them. HEIRS unstrapped, stomping toward the munitions locker. Then we ram Ever Guy. Cutter's fusion pile might crack their hull. Negative, Ran said sharply. Too many unknowns. He stared at the map, sleeping now, but still radiant within its crystalline heart. An idea sparked. Insane, but perhaps their only sliver of chance. Dal could. We modulate the resonator to mimic conservator distress frequencies? Her brows knit. Yes. If we guess the harmonic why? Because the Argæsh just fought those crescents. Ran replied. If they believe the harrowed ones still lurk in this debris, perhaps they'll hesitate or target false ghosts. HEIRS rumbled approval. Turn predators into prey. I like it. Dal's fingers flew. Harmonics shrieked through the deck, subaudible, yet felt in bones. A pulse radiated outward on echo of the conservators' lament. Instantly, the Dominion ships reacted. The fortress banked, lance ports swiveling toward phantom coordinates determined by their threat algorithms. Escorts spread like raptors. Drones re-vectorized, weaving shielding webs around non-existent targets. Ran seized the moment. Full burno. End. Umber. Ran seized the moment. The cutter's crippled engines wailed into overdrive, spitting white plasma that flared against debris. They shot from concealment, threading between jagged spars. Dominion sensors recalibrated too late. Their first salvo tore asteroids instead of flesh. The cutter skimmed under the fortress's ventral bulge, brushing magnetic wake so intense alarms bellowed. HEIRS hurled flechettes upwards, livers of hyper-regdance tungsten that pierced armor seams before detonating kiloton charges. Shrapnel geysered. Internal fires blossomed along the fortress belly. But the Argæsh were no amateurs. Counterfire raked the cutter, shearing port stabilizers. Artificial gravity flickered. Consoles burst sparks. The vessel spiraled, screaming toward the rogue planet's thin methane atmosphere. Brace for atmospheric graze, Ran barked. They skimmed the upper haze, hull plates glowing cherry. Shockwaves hammered them, but also shook a pair of pursuing escorts loose, their aerodynamics unsuited to planetary dip. The cutter's skin peeled yet held. Dal clawed at controls. Grav readings spiking were over a tectonic fault. Ran's mind raced. HEIRS load seismic torpedoes, drop them on my mark. The old warrior grinned, priming warheads originally meant for asteroid mining. Tell me when. At 100 kilometers, Ran shouted, Mark! Torpedoes tumbled, thrusters firing to bury their noses in the unstable mantle. Seconds stretched. Then the rogue planet convulsed. A blossom of incandescent magma erupted, hurling titanic plumes that sandblasted the escorts. One vanished in molten spray. The other veered, engines overcompensating, and clipped a rising column of pyroclastic debrisventing atmosphere in a spiraling deathfall. The fortress above still hunted but now battered, leaking ionized gas from wounds HEIRS had carved. The cutter clawed free of gravity, arcing toward the Terminator where the starless night cloaked their thermal signature. Within the shadow, Ran ordered a full shutdown. They drifted, silent as stone. The Dominion fortress loomed on sensors, circling warily, then angled its fractured bulk away, perhaps unwilling to risk further damage in pursuit of a ghost. Minutes crawled. When at last Dal inhaled a shaky breath, Ran allowed himself a thin smile. We live. HEIRS slapped a bulkhead. And we still have our cargo. Dal, however, gazed at the map, now pulsing erratically. The modulation it destabilized the crystal lattice. We need a stable quantum forge to realign it. Helix Zero had one, Ran said softly. The wreckage outside mocked them. Then we find another. HEIRS straightened. Legion outposts scatter the rim. One must yet stand. Ran frowned. But without the map's guidance, we risk losing the corridor itself. Dal flexed trembling hands. I can keep it coherent for a time hours, perhaps. Then the grav vectors will decohere. Ran met their eyes. Then we fly by instinct. Set course for the Talon Reach. Station Oriel might still function, and if not, we mine the forges ourselves. The voyage to the Talon Reach was a passage through the blade edge of desperation. The cutter's engines flared and faltered, patched hourly by HEIRS's gruff ingenuity. Life support recyclers rattled like arthritic bones. Outside, void phantoms whispered along the hullities of dark radiation escaping the collapsed vault. Twice they encountered conservator fragments, derelict polyhedral drones adrift, their cores flickering feebly. Ran ordered them salvaged. Dal coaxed memory traces from crystalline matrices. Through them they learned more of the harrowed one's plight. Eons of wandering through cosmic dusk, gathering lumens like beggars of infinity. The knowledge stirred conflicting currents within Thempody and Fury entwined. On the 12th cycle, proximity alarms screamed. A vessel of staggering scale eclipsed the stars off their port bow. Not Argæsh nor Legion or Conservator. It was organic in silhouette. A crescent of living metal sheathed in chitinous plates, rippling with bioluminescent veins. Its size dwarfed battleships. Its wake shimmered with motes that sprouted wings of plasma before fading. HEIRS exhaled a word like a curse. World whales. Dal's voice was a reverent whisper. Iolithy custodians. Legends only. Gigantic, nomadic symbionts rumored to shepherd cometary nurseries. The Iolithy rarely crossed paths with humanoid empires. To encounter one here, at the fringe of ruin, felt like destiny's heavy hand. The cutter was an ant beside a leviathan. Yet, as they drifted in awe, the whale's flank unfurled 1,000 tendrils of light that danced across vacuum. Patterns formed mathematical fractals that resonated with the damaged map. Dal gasped. It sings in coordinate harmonics. It recognizes the map's frequency. Ran's pulse quickened. Open channel. No voice answered. Instead, a telemetric stream flooded the mimages of star nurseries, nebular cradles, the nurturing of planetary cores. Then a questing inquiry, almost childlike, seeking the reason for the map's discord. Dal fed back wordless sorrow. Suns abducted. Civilizations imperiled. The Iolithy processed the concept, their flanks rippling crimson gold. Then they projected coordinates Oriel Station, followed by a spiral signature indicating safe passage through micro-rifts that pervaded the Reach's chaotic gravity. Hope ignited. They'll guide us, Ran murmured. The whale drifted ahead, shedding silvery seed pods that glowed brightest where grav shear threatened, marking a path like cosmic breadcrumbs. The cutter followed, sliding through perilous eddies with surprising grace. As hours bled into days, Ran watched the podlights wink like guardian angels. He felt humility, sensed that the galaxy, vast though it was, nurtured alliances beyond familiar boundaries. Yet doom still shadowed them. The map's tremors worsened hairline fractures spidering across its crystal faces. Dal labored ceaselessly, but time gnawed their margin. On the third night watch, Oriel bloomed into view. A toroidal fortress floating above the iridescent storms of a gas giant. Its shield lattices still burned bright, though scarring on the hull attested to recent combat. Defense grids swiveled as the cutter approached. Ran hailed. "Oriel, control this," is Commander Rerick. "We bear critical asset and request immediate dock." A pause. Then a familiar voice crackled. "Ran? By the ravening comets, is that you?" Ran's heart leapt. "Valis Cormso, you survived Helix 0. The Legion engineer's laugh was brittle. "Barely. We jumped out when the Argæsh arrived landed here with half a crew and a prayer. Docking Bay 2 is pressurized for you. Hurry storms are fierce tonight." Guided by the Iolethe's final beacon, they slipped into the bay. As the clamps sealed, the whale dipped its colossal head, emitted a final cascade of rainbow spangles, then curved away on silent currents, mission complete. Oriel's interior bustled with survivors. Engineers in scorched uniforms, medtechs tending to evacuees, Legion Marines reinforcing bulkheads. Valis Corma, gaunt, flame-haired man with augmetic ice embraced, ran fiercely before ushering them toward the station's heart. The Quantum Forge. The forge hummed like a miniature star caged by graviton sigils. A cradle of obsidian prongs awaited the map. Dal lay it gently within, servos clamped shut, and radiant lines of code wove through the fractures, knitting crystal like living glass. Ran exhaled as the map brightened, vectors sharpening. But celebration was short. Alarms clamored. Valis cursed. "Argæsh task group dropping from Fold 2 dread arcs and screening frigates. They must have traced your signature. My now. Hudaven 7D. Hudaven Plorder." Hurus's grin was wolfish. "Let them come. Oriel still carries bite." Ran surveyed the tactical pain. The Argæsh force dwarfed Oriel's guns. Yet the station's proximity to the gas giant offered an edge. "Valis," he said, "can the forge redirect surplus power to ring fields?" "To what end?" "We're going to turn Oriel into a graviton sling. When their dread arcs close, we slingshot plasma from the planet's storm belt right into their keels." Valis's eyes widened. That much mass energy could tear the ring apart. "Then we patch as it flies," Ran said. "Better to break saving the galaxy than rust waiting." Dal joined them, eyes shining with recovered zeal. "Map is stabilizing. Once the Argæsh are repelled, we can transmit Shepherd vectors to all Legion sectors." Hurus tightened gauntlets. "Then let's earn that future." Hurus. "Plice for mate." Space ignited. The first Argæsh dread arc advanced like a floating citadel, spewing null matter bolts that ate chunks from Oriel's shields. In response, station Gauss railers launched payloads needle rods of compressed hydrogen encased in magnet fields. They bored into the arc's forward bastions and detonated, shattering emitters. But the Leviathan pressed on, outer armor folding like origami to expose fresh firing arrays. Inside the forge chamber, Dal and Valis synchronized the ring field. Tremors rippled along Oriel's spine as gravity coils spun beyond safe thresholds. Below, the gas giant's clouds churned into towering vortices, superreheated by induced friction. Pulses of plasma stronger than a star's coronal mass ejection jetted upward, funneled by invisible tracks toward the station's ventral sluice. Ran's voice boomed across comms. "Now. Oriel!" A bellow of released titans shook every soul aboard. A ribbon of incandescent matter, 1,000 kilometers long, lanced through vacuum and struck the dread arc amidships. Its null matter shields shrieked in wild color shifts, then collapsed. The arc fissured down its spine cores, overloading and blossomed into a silent supernova that momentarily outshone the gas giant. Cheers erupted, but Hurus barked. Second arc, still inbound. Indeed, the twin vessel veered, learning from its sibling's demise, launching saturation fire. Oriel's ring field sputtered, half its coils fried, plasma channels wavered. Valis cursed down the comlink. Field relays offline on Quadrant 12. We can't align the shot. Rand's mind raced. Then we become the shot. Charge the station's reserve drive slingshot Oriel itself into their flank. Abandon the station? Dal cried. No. Rand felt destiny tighten. We stay and steer. Hurus slapped his shoulder. Madness worthy of my old cadet. Crew scrambled to inertia couches. Ran, Dal, Hurus, and Valis manned the core helm pit. Gravitors screamed as thrusters fired. Aureoliotaurus 3 kilometers, across yard toward the dread arc. Its damaged ringfield flaring a makeshift bow shock. The Argæsh commander, perhaps astonished, failed to break off until too late. The station's rim collided with the Ark's prow, slicing through armor like a diamond saw. Both Titans tumbled, locked together, trailing debris and molten plasma. Rand triggered emergency magaseals. Detach habitation hub-subject pods on safe trajectories. Oriel's outer segments sheared away, carrying hundreds of personnel in life modules that arc toward the gas giant's exosphere, where parachute inflatables would drag them into stable sky habitats. Within the fuse of metal and flame, Ron saw the forge's containment crack. Quantum energies surged, threatening to implode. Dal met his gaze, serenity amid chaos. If we breach here, the map dies. Then we hold the forge till evacuation complete, Rand said. Valis coughed, smoke choking. Shield's down core cannot maintain temperature. Hurus roared, hauling himself to the auxiliary cooler banks, manually venting coolant into raging manifolds. Superacled mist flooded, buying precious seconds. The Dread Ark's engines warbled, its spine snapped, disgorging reactors. A chain reaction blossomed waves of neutrino fire washed over the station. Consoles fused. Valis slumped, augmetic eyes sparking out. Ran, Dal, and Hurus dragged him to an escape lift, sealing hatches as containment bulkheads folded under thermonuclear shear. They burst onto a tramway, where an evacuation sled hovered. Hurus shoved them in, then set the sled's autopulse for the flight deck. The doors irised. Go, he rumbled. Rand's blood chilled. You're coming. Someone must keep the forge stable till you clear radius, Hurus said, voice gentle for once. Old bones owe debts. He keyed a lockout, sealing himself inside. Dal's scream echoed. Rand pounded the canopy, but the sled rocketed away. Through the viewplate, they glimpsed Hurus turn back toward the shuddering core, silhouette lit by hellfire. Moments later, the sled slammed into the flight deck's skimmer bay. Rand sprinted, dragging the nearly unconscious Valis, while Dal cradled the map. They dove into a patrol corvette, systems hot from pre-launch cycles. Beyond hull plates, Oriel and the Dread Ark drifted locked in lethal embrace. Hurus's voice crackled over a narrow band. Forge field stabilized. Reactor temps rising no further to go. Rand's throat tightened. Hurus. Listen, youth. When you steer those suns home, remember the stones we placed to bridge the dark. A rough laugh. Now clear vector, before I light the sky. Rand hammered engines. The Corvette blazed into open space, thrusters whining. Behind them, a pinprick Florida seed of white hotter than creation. Oriel's forge collapsed into quantum implosion, swallowing the Dread Ark and itself. A sphere of annihilation expanded, then inverted, leaving behind only a coruscating aurora. Silence filled Rand's heart. Dal's head bowed, tears glimmering. He chose the path. Rand placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. Hurus Holgardian of all dawns. He steadied his voice. Now, we guard in his stead. Valis stirred, whispering. The pod-stracking survivors stable. We have people. We. My no. Rand nodded. Then we have hope. He laid the Corvette on a wide arc, collecting life modules adrift. Hours passed in somber labor until every beacon winked green aboard. Then Ran turned to Dal. Map status? She held it up. Despite tremors, its vectors shone clear. Ready. Transmit Shepard algorithms to all Legion frequencies encrypted with HEIRS' final key. Valis patched systems. Across the vacuum, tight beam relays leapt, scattering seeds of instruction through the star O-net. Soon, from a dozen cloaked citadels, dormant Legion fleets would rouse, each primed to intercept a stolen sun, to guide it along the renewed corridors. Ran watched the first acknowledgements ping back. From the diamond docks of Vega, the ice bastions of Calero, the floating monasteries of Orionis V, names he had feared lost now glowed bright with resolve. He whispered, "So begins the long shepherding." Dal slipped her fingers through his. And the long healing. The corvette banked, engines spreading silver fans. Ahead, the corridor's rim shimmered awaiting shepherds. Behind, the embers of sacrifice glowed eternal. Ran Rarak set course into the starlit gulf, bearing with him the map, the memory of HEIRS' whole, and an unyielding vow that no light would be stolen again without contest. The voyage yet stretched across years, wars, and wonders untold, but in that moment, among survivors bound by loss and purpose, the promise of dawn blazed brighter than any captive sun. Aboard the corvette, Eclipse's promise, the humming of the patch together, drives faded into a deep, almost meditative thrum. All around the bridge, swaths of hardlight telemetry wove themselves into shimmering lattices that mapped every Shepard corridor, every stolen solar mass, every Legion squadron now barreling outward on converging parabolic courses. The galaxy scarred, luminous, immeasurably vast stretched before Ran Rarak, like a living tapestry begging for careful stitches. He drew in a slow breath, feeling the ache of fatigue ripple through every muscle and sinew. It had been 72 hours since HEIRS' whole's fiery vigil over Oriel's 72 hours of grief, radio chatter, and frenetic planning. Now, at last, there came a hush. The precipice before their next plunge. Dal Nara drifted across the bridge, her bare feet making no sound on the magnetic decking. The Skyway resonator circlet was gone, replaced by a slender coronet of mithril fibers integrated directly with the map's new lattice crystal. It glowed softly, painting her cheeks in rose-gold ember. Ran watched her rest one palm against the navigation dais, and for an instant her silhouette seemed lighter than starlight, both ephemeral and unyielding. Valiscorm reclined in the comms cradle, a tangle of medwar patches covering half his torso. Every few minutes he coughed a dry rasp that stung Ran's conscience, but his augmetic eyes never wavered from the data feed. Ayatine agents, Jovian corsairs, even a reformed band of Kalian Starro pirates had answered the Legion's coded summons. The galaxy might be fractious, but it recognized apocalypse when it heard it knocking. Ran turned to the forward canopy. "Is the shepherding protocol locked across sectors Theta through Lambda?" Valis nodded. "Confirmed. Gravsluice nodes are unfolding on schedule. We'll intercept the first migrant suns at No Junction in 21 hours. Dal's fingers fluttered across the crystal. Lines of force rippled like harp strings. "We'll need every hour. The conservator lattices still tether those stars. If we don't override their damping fields precisely, we could shear a sun in half, or spin it into runaway nova." Ran allowed himself a tight smile. "We've done the impossible twice this week already." A warning klaxon pulsestone loud beat that shivered the bulkheads. Valis frowned. "That's the long-range situational net. Something enormous just disrupted subspace in Sector Kappa." He expanded the feed. Signal echoes show mass signatures on the order of planetary cores. 3 objects, each accelerating at 100 gravs, inbound on vectors that intersect our Shepard corridors. Dal traded a grim look with Ran. "Conservator counterattack?" Valis shook his head. "Signature's different. Not Argæsh either. These are..." His voice trailed off as the computer displayed silhouettes. "My gods, those are... stellar Buoyants." Ran's jaw set. Buoyants, the automata of the Eternal Watch? Legend held that the Eternal Watch, an unfathomably ancient polity, lurking at the galaxy's rim-deployed living machines to guard cosmic boundaries. The Buoyants, forged of exotic matter, drifted in remote voids to monitor entropic flux. They rarely moved. Rarer still approached inhabited space. For 3, to enter known lanes no accelerating, purposeful could mean only catastrophe or judgment. Trajectory? Rand demanded. On course for Najunction. They'll arrive 4 hours before our first sun convoy, Valis replied. If they deem the corridor a threat, they could sever it, take the stars with it. Dal paced. We have to reach them first. The watch is reputed to be aloof, but not hostile unless provoked. Rand's mind sifted possibilities. Then we negotiate her. Failing that, distract them until the Shepherd convoys pass. He stabbed controls. Power to interdiction coils. We burn for Kappa at full thrust. The Eclipse's promise, catapulted across 50 light-years in a blur of slipbuck knots, each jump compressing 2 seconds of metafold terror into brilliant white flashes. The ship shuddered with every leap, plating creaking where Hurus's quick repairs had left hairline fissures. Yet the corvette held. Courage and necessity braced every rivet. On the final dropout, reality blossomed into a vista of staggering scale. 3 pillars of obsidian glass soared against the galactic night, each 20 kilometers long, tapering to spines that hummed with violet lightning. They moved with the solemn grace of monoliths drifting up from some underworld sea, leaving whirlwinds of gravitational lensing in their wake. Between them twined cables of molten gold, intangible yet furious, like magnetic ropes binding titans. Rand's breath left him. Visual confirmation. Buoyant constructs, ripple symmetrical, central void hearts. Dal whispered, I can almost taste their mind scold. Crystalline. Older than dust. Valis routed hailing protocols, but every frequency returned the same feedback. An echo chamber of silence broken only by a single harmonic pulse, repeating every 0.87 seconds. Deep, inhuman, inexorable. They acknowledge, Valis murmured, but choose not to speak. The Buoyants adjusted course subtle now, drifting in a triangular spearhead aimed straight through New Junction. At their current velocity, even a graze would disintegrate the corridor fields and scatter stars like hurled embers. Ran keyed engines. We'll draw within 2,000 clicks. Dal, prepare resonator modulation. Show them the stolen stars. Hurus's sacrifice. Our mission. Dal maintained fragile composure. She closed her eyes, letting the map flood her thoughts. Invisible tendrils of psychic data shot outward, interlacing with the Buoyant's basal frequency, spinning colorful fractal flowers that hung an instant in the mental plane before dissolving. They react, she murmured. Curiosity. Analysis. But not slowing. The Buoyant's violet coronas intensified. Waves of condensed gravitons rippled forth shockwaves that battered the corvette, buffeting passengers against harnesses. Alarms shrilled. Valis hissed, their ramping escort fields like defensive armor. Rand's knuckles whitened. Dal, project our intent again, stronger. Show them we'll not let the corridor fall. She poured memory, passion, sorrow into the resonator. A psychic beacon blossomed. Hurus, standing before the forge. Oriel's implosion. Stars weeping as chains unlatched. For a heartbeat, the Buoyants slowed 1/100th a meter per second. Then resumed full speed. Dal sagged. They acknowledge pathos but weigh calculus higher. They will not cease. Rand's heart hammered. We force engagement. Valis stared. With what? We're a gnat swarm before mountains. Rand's voice steeled. Size isn't fate. Options? The comms officer, ever analytical, scanned schematics. Their outer shells flux in 10-millisecond windows when internal cooling vents cycle. The vent fields polarize matter negative to baryonic charge. If we seed those vents with positive flux nanomass, they'll absorb kinetic backlash that destabilizes their reaction matrix. Dal finished. They'll have to arrest motion or risk meltdown. Valis managed a wan grin. Exactly. But we need delivery method. Rand's gaze flicked to the aft cargo manifest. Among salvage from Oriel were 2 barrels of nanite seed quanta grain engineered to repair hull fractures. With polar inversion, they could become the needed positive flux payload. But they had to be injected physically, during vent cycle, at near point-blank range. He rose. I'll fly a cutter pod. Dal's head snapped up. Know your fleet command. I'll go. Valis coughed. Neither. My augmetics can calc cycle timing to microsecond. I'll take the pod. Rand looked between them. Each face burned with the same determination he'd seen on HEIRS. He shook his head. We choose together. They crowded over the tactical display. The cycles rotated like fractured gears. Someone would pilot a pod into the churning hurricane of grav flux, match velocity with a vent mouth 500 meters wide, and eject 40 kilograms of inverted nanite dust in a narrow plume. Miss by 3 milliseconds and the vent would close shearing the pod into quantum shavings. Rand weighed skills. Dal's psychic link might be crucial after. Valis, though wounded, had computational reflexes surpassing either of them. He exhaled. Valis, you'll pilot. Dal, you'll stay on bridge, modulating the map to keep Buoyant's focus. I'll fly escort guns for distraction. Neither argued. They were beyond doubt. The launch cradle spat Valis's POTA stubby dart of ablative ceramics into the abyss. Rand's corvette looped overhead in erratic vectors, pulse cannons spitting harmless bursts at the monolith's flanks, fireworks that blossomed, then fizzled against violet armor. The Buoyants did not fire back. They merely continued, deaf, to insect stings. Inside the pod, Valis's augmented vision parsed vent schematics. Numbers scrolled. Distance, velocity differentials, micropressures. He breathed once, twice, then keyed thrusters. The pod lurched. On Eclipse's promise, Dal whispered telemetry across the quantum link. Hold drift 5%. Wait for vent collapse. Now adjust. .com. Valis toggled microjets. The pod fell into the vent's lee, turbulence buffeting plating. Ahead yawned a circular maw lined with translucent ribs where brilliant streams of exotic plasma pulsed. Any mistiming would vaporize him. Countdown. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Cycle delta spike. Dal called. Now. Valis dumped the nanite payload. A silver spray fanned, each particle reversing baryonic polarity. The vent irised on schedule, drawing the dust inward, catalyzing chaos. Energy graphs on Rand's dash erupted. The Buoyant jerked, velocity dropping 15%. Concomitantly, its 2 companions adjusted formation, first time their trajectory altered. Dal gasped. Feedback loop matrix destabilizing, they'll have to lock down. Indeed. Violet halos dimmed. The spearhead slowed again, now half initial speed. A hailing signal pinged different frequency. Rand patched it through. A voice like basalt grinding glaciers. Your intervention interrupts bound entropy. Identify purpose. Dal answered. Voice tremulous, yet firm. Shepherding stolen sons home. Preventing collateral extinction. Purpose aligned with watch directive. A pause. Provide concordance parameters. Rand blinked at Dal. She smiled in disbelief. The Buoyants were offering parley. In rapid bursts, she fed them corridor schematics, energy budgets, cosmic aftermath projections. The Buoyants processed. Minutes stretched thin. Valis's pod, now adrift with no drive, was tractor beamed into Rand's hangar like a child's toy. At last the voice returned. Parameters accepted. We will escort corridor junctions. Ensure stability. Dal sagged in relief. Tears traced her cheek. Rand swallowed gratitude that felt too vast for words. The Buoyants pivoted gracefully, sliding into flanking positions along the shepherd path Sentinels now, not intruders. With crisis abated, the Eclipse's promise vectored back toward Najunction. Over the next 19 hours, the first of the stolen stars arrive at each blazing titan, nestled in a gossamer cradle of gravmesh nets, controlled remotely by escort frigates. From the bridge's grand viewport, Ran watched the Buoyants project supplementary stabilizer sarching streams of inverse mass that shaped vacuum into invisible channels. Every sun slid along those channels like pearls on silken strings. Radiant rivers of plasma painted cosmic murals across the black. Even in the face of such wonder, the crew worked tirelessly, recalibrating course corridors, nudging stellar payloads, mitigating microeddies that could send a star awry. When the last convoy of the first wave locked onto a safe return vector, cheers rippled through Legion intercoms sector-wide. A third of the stolen suns were now underway to their home systems. Civilizations that had watched skies dim would, in a few standard years, witness dawn restored. But victory remained tentative. Twa-hundreds of the star horde still orbited the collapsed vault, and the conservator remnants scattered polyhedra, broken but resentful, began reconverging. Encrypted astro-intel from outlying scouts reported swarms knitting themselves into partial war forms, guided by ragged but tenacious AI cores. Ran convened an emergency council. Dal, Valis, plus captains of 6 arriving Legion cruisers. Hollow avatars flickered in a ring around the bridge. Phase 1 is success, Ran began, voice echoing gentle yet stern. Phase 2 liberating the remaining suns requires a strike on the vault remnant. We must disable or convert the conservators' swarm before they reassert control and tear open fresh corridors. Captain Jathri, commander of the cruiser, Silver Exile, frowned. We've only 30 capital ships in range. The swarm could number in the thousands once reassembled. Valis tapped data readouts. But their AI hierarchy is decentralized only superficially. Our salvage decoded root seed-seach polyhedron's heart crystal resonates to a single quantatone. If we replicate that tone across the map and feed it through quantum broadcasting arrays, we could issue a master countery command. A purpose override, Jathri mused. Turn their instinct from consumption to restoration. Dal nodded. Or to stasis. We'd need a broadcast station with planetary-class energy banks. Closest asset. The abandoned Calath Forge. Ran recalled dusty briefings. Calath, a half-constructed Dyson lattice around a dead brown dwarfrigan unclear, long ago discarded due to economic collapse. Its partial shell still bristled with stellar inducers able to pump exawatts. Perfect for a broadcast. If we hold Calath long enough to flag the override, the conservators will reconfigure, Ran said. But the Argæsh Dominion remains a wild card. We crippled 2 dread arcs. They'll marshal vengeance. Valis grimaced. Argæsh deep fleets stretch from Centauri Rift to Taurus Null. We can't face them outright. One section, Valis Rift to Taurus Null. Silence fell. Then Dal's eyes flashed. Then we don't. We misdirect them. She brought up star charts. The Argæsh crave harrowed tech for null weapon development. If we seed false signals of a prime conservator data core at Phoenix Nebula, they'll dispatch their main flotilla there, giving us a window. A bold deception, but feasible. Ran considered quick moral calculus. The nebula, uninhabited, posed limited risk. He lifted his chin. Do it. Captain Jathri, compile falsified telemetry, make it convincing. Valis, coordinate with Buoyants to guard corridors in our absence. Dal and I will spearhead the strike on Calath. 3 days later, the Eclipse's promise, flanked by a task group of 8 cruisers and 2 heavy carriers, slid into Caloth space. The brown dwarf Lumeda sullen ember wrapped in half-finished superstructures, skeletal rings stretching kilometers, embedded with dormant fusion cicatrices. Sensors swept wide. No hostiles. Valis, from engineering, reported, Forge circuits intact, but inert. We can restore 4 inducers within 6 hours. Dal set to work, rerouting map harmonics into the forge scaffolding. As conduits crackled alive, electromagnetic hymns poured forth low, majestic chords that quivered deep in marrow. While crew swarmed the rings, Ran sat alone atop an observation pylon, letting the dwarf's faint glow wash over him. He missed Hurus's booming laughter, his certainty. The veteran's absence felt like a hollow stardark, yet gravitational, bending every thought. Footsteps approached. Dal settled beside him, cross-legged on the pylon's edge. For a moment, they neither spoke, content in shared silence. Finally, she whispered, "The override could free trillions of lives, Ran. But it reshapes sentient minds. Are we certain? 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 Are we certain?" With Kosley. CH with Kason. White, Myton. Sentient? He exhaled. They herded suns like cattle, but I saw fear in their pulses. Hurus believed even fear deserves mercy. Dal studied him. Then we redirect, not obliterate. Let them sleep rather than perish. He nodded gratefully. Valis's voice crackled over bead Dokam. Inducers aligned. Power up in Twaminus 60 minutes. Ran and Dal rose, hands brushing briefly a spark of promise amid cosmic night. The Calith Forge roared to life. Wing after wing of Ringa segments lit with blinding radiance as fusion channels ignited. Energy white, primal poured into resonance crystals arrayed around the map. Dal stood at the epicenter, mind fused to circuits in a trance deeper than dream. Every stolen star, every drifting polyhedron, every heartbreak and hope, fed the crucible within her soul. Ran oversaw fleet perimeter. Scouts reported conservator swarms accelerating from all quarters, attracted by the power Flaria wasp horde to a bonfire. Legion ships formed concentric shields, launching remote flak drones and gravitic nets to slow approach, buying Dal precious minutes. At T-0, Dal opened the floodgates. The override burst outward, a single, flawless note expanding faster than light, encoded not merely in radio waves but in quantum entanglementa, symphony etched upon the universe's very state. Ran felt the deck vibrate as if echoing whale song across dimensions. On hollows, every polyhedron flickered from the distant rim to the vault's heart. Their mad trajectories faltered. The innermost structures, folded petals inward, swirling into torpor. Beams, drawing energy from captive suns, faded. In the vault, luminous tethers loosened. Stars began sliding free, inertia nudged by buoyant gravitational eddies. An eruption of cheers flooded comms. But triumph curdled as proximity sensors screamed anew. A colossal warp diverged into existence at Calith's zenith. From that wound emerged an Argæsh superheric. Dominion pride. 30 kilometers of adamantine arrogance. The Phoenix ruse had lured their coursers. But the Pride flagship had come hunting the main prize alone. It opened with a lance of null matter, 100 meters wide, slicing a forge ring as though through paper. Explosions rippled, crew flung free into void. "Battle stations!" Ran roared. "Cruisers flank. Carriers unload. Stingers keep them off Dal's core." Fury unfolded. The Pride's broadside disgorged wave after wave of seeker torpedoes that bled space behind them. Legion frigates interposed, their sacrifice converting into blooms of blue ion. In the forge cavity, Dal's concentration wavered but held. She could not cease casting the override until its echo stabilized. Ran banked Eclipse's promise, under the Ark's belly, unleashing every cannon in punishing bursts. But the Ark's armor, laced with null induction, shrugged off energy like drizzle. Valis's voice cracked. "Ran Brown Dwarf's magnetosphere is hyper-overcharged. If we invert polarity on the forge coils, we can create an artificial micro-Eson spot, a gravity sink. Drag the Pride into the dwarf's well." "Collateral?" Ran asked. "It'll tear the forge apart, but wave already complete. Dal must evacuate." Ran opened a duplex channel. "Dal, can you break link in under 5 minutes?" She responded, calm amid maelstrom. "Yes. Do it." Valis and engineering teams scrambled, reconfiguring circuits. The forge rings groaned, luminous arcs snapping into the dwarf's core. Magnetic lines wrenched, forming a spinning vortex 2,000 kilometers wide. Gravity vectors twisted. The Dominion Pride's mass alarms likely blared, but even its prodigious thrusters fought a losing battle. The Ark yawed, nose drooping toward the gaping maelstrom. Yet the Ark retaliated ventral bays, disgorged harpoons that hooked the forge's skeletal segments. The Pride anchored itself, engines keening, pulling the pylon away from collapse. Forces Straineda, celestial tug-of-war. "Cut those anchors!" Rand shouted. His corvette and 3 Catalan frigates dove, guns blazing at chain links the size of office towers. Nullshock sung, hull plating melted. Still, they pressed. One by one, chains snapped. On the last, Rand targeted the anchorhead, blasting it clean. The Dominion Pride lurched free, inertia tipping it toward the whirlpool. Its thrusters flared ruby butt. The vortex mouth opened like cosmic leviathan, engulfing prow, midship, then stern. A titanic scream electromagnetic shriekant the comm networks before the Ark tumbled, swallowing itself in gravitational fire. The dwarf's corona surged, swallowing the wreck in incandescent inferno. Calith rings buckled, explosive decompression tore girders, plasma toroids arced. "Dal!" Rand called. "I'm clear," came her voice. A life shuttle zipped from the collapsing core, thrusters sputtering. Rand adjusted course, scooped the shuttle into hangar just as forge detonations cascaded. They leapt to slip poke knot at maximum thrust. Behind them, Calith blazed like a newborn supernova, dwarf star igniting as energy coils fed runaway fusion. Light outraced them, a monumental dawn spilling into star-speckled sea. Minutes later, safe distance achieved, Rand cradled Dal's soot-streaked face. Her eyes opened, fragile but alive. "The override?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Stable." She smiled faintly. "Conservators?" "Sleeping." Valis limped onto the deck. Argæsh flagged distress across all nets. Their emperor will howl for blood, but his main pridewark just died screaming. Rand helped Dal to her feet. "Then we offer them choice. Peace or the same fate." In the sweeps that followed, the Legion Shepherd fleet now joined by Buoyant custodians and freed conservator drones guided the last of the stolen suns home. Tattered civilizations lit ceremonial fires as dawn returned. Empires once sundered by suspicion forged new accords. Even the Argæsh, chastened by Kaloth's inferno, accepted armistice in exchange for limited harrowed technology strictly regulated under Watch oversight. A monument ring rose in orbit around Altatherur, HEIRS Hull's crown, each segment a reclaimed shard of Oriel, studded with staroamber to catch sunrise. There, Ranrarak spoke words broadcast to all worlds. Across void and terror, we have learned that light is not the prize of the few, but the trust of the many. Let the stars we guide today remind us that guardianship outweighs conquest. Cheers thrummed through the ether. Later, on a quiet promenade beneath the transparent vault of the crown, Rand walked with Dal, fingers entwined. Beyond, twin suns bathed the ring in molten gold. Buoyant sentinels drifted in slow vigil. Colossal against far nebular curtains of promise, that ancient watchers now stood alongside humankind. Valis joined, healed. Laughter restored. Holding data pads alive with new projects. Rebuilding forge arrays into beacons of exploration. Converting dormant conservator polyhedra into art that sang the silent sorrow of a race who feared entropy. Rand looked up at the vastness, felt Horus's presence in every sunrise, in every star reclaimed. "The galaxy feels different," Dal whispered. He nodded. "We were stewards of a single victory. But dawns must always be guarded. There will be other catastrophes, other nights." Her smile was soft, fierce. "Then we keep watch together." They turned toward the view where a fresh corridor ribboned outward, no longer a chain for stolen suns, but a highway for ambassadors and dreamers. Rand's heart swelled with tempered hope. Beyond the ring, a newborn star, ignited one of the last to return homets. First, radiant pulse washing over the crown like a benediction. In that light, sorrow and sacrifice blended with joy, forging tempered steel in the souls of all who witnessed. Ranrarak, Dalnara, and the galaxy itself stood poised on the threshold of a new epiphany in which stars blazed not merely as trophies of power, but as fires of shared destiny. And somewhere in the hushed immensity of space, the memory of HEIRS, whole guardian, warrior, friend burned still, a banner forever unfurled against the dark. A hush like the breath of universes settling lay over Altatherur's night watches. Yet in that hush, Ranrarak sensed currents as deep and restless as the dark between galaxies' currents that stirred the soul of every thinking being now waking to a broader dawn. 3 months had passed since the last stolen sun blazed back into rightful orbit. 3 months since the conservator swarm folded into chrysalis slumber and the Argæsh embassies. Pride singed, but unbroken, signed the Helix Accords. The galaxy mended wounds, with the urgency of organisms realizing at last the delicacy of their shared breath. But peace in stellar terms is only the pause between pulses, and the pulse was quickening again. Ran paced the observation rim of HEIRS Hole's crown, boots echoing faintly on adamantine decking. Below, Altatherur's twin seas glimmered sapphire and emerald. Above, the reconstructed Guardian's buoyant monoliths, conservator dream cocoons, and freshly commissioned Legion watchkeels formed a loose cordon around the system like slow-moving constellations. Dalnara emerged from the lift alcove, a pearl-white cloak fluttering about her slim frame. The map of gravities had been miniaturized into a pendant at her throat, but even dormant, it pulsed with subdued auroral hues. She joined him at the rail. "Storm readings again?" she asked, knowing his mood too well. He nodded. Deep sensors along the Perseid fringe register vacuum ripple events, bigger than microquasars, shorter than hyperognova shock fronts. Something out there keeps slamming fist holes through spacetime. Dal's green eyes narrowed. Cosmic tectonics? The watch predicted calm for another 1,000,000 cycles. "I've seen watch predictions fail," Ran murmured, recalling the Buoyant's first unannounced arrival. Besides, merchant caravans report echoes of a signal-in archaic beacon cycling behind the ripple fronts. Dal touched the pendant, eyes half-lidded. "Let me see." Harmonics unfurled in silence. Ran felt only the faintest pressure in his skull, like distant thunder rolling beneath the bones. Dal's lashes fluttered, then stilled. A heartbeat later she inhaled sharply. "Not tectonics," she whispered. "Intent. A mind, or a chorus of minds, punching windows through the void-testing angles, mapping interference." "Looking for something," Ran concluded. He tapped his wristcom. "Valisbridge briefing. 10 minutes." The Legion's new flagship, Aurora Phalanx, waited in high orbit. A triple-bugelled spear nearly twice the length of the fallen Oriflamme, layered with crystals gifted by the watch, and propelled by a hybrid meta-offal drive coaxed from conservator mathematics. Yet her bridge thrummed with the same disciplined energy Ran remembered from the old dreadnought's glory days. Valiscorm rose stiffly as Ran and Dal entered. Though his injuries had healed, the engineer still moved with ginger care. The price of Kaloth's hellfire. Holloway tanks cycled star maps, awash in pulsing red specks. Ran faced the assembled officers' representatives of Vega, Mars, the Jovian clans, a nervous Argæsh attaché draped in austere silk. "Ripple incursions continue along an expanding arc," he gestured at the display. "Frequency: 1 every 30 hours. Magnitude escalating. All vectors converge on a singularity in the trailing halo." Captain Jathri, silver-eyed and stern, tapped coordinates. "That's practically intergalactic. Few charted lanes venture there." Valis keyed a magnification. "We discovered a ghost record in abandoned Syrian Archivesa project called the Lodestar Citadel, classified in the Age of Thousand Kings, then erased. But metadata hints it was a failsafe engine, capable of manipulating galaxy-scale probability matrices." A stunned hush. Probability warping exceeded even buoyant craft. Ran felt his pulse spike. If the citadel is real and waking these ripples, might be its call, or its convulsions. Dal added, or someone knocking on its door. The Argæsh attaché inclined his horned helm. Dominion scouts along the rift sense similar waves. Our diviners speak of a weaver in the blind. My emperor fears a rival ascension. Murmurs rippled. Ran raised a hand. Speculation aside, we require verification. Aurora Phalanx will lead a reconnaissance convoy to the Halo. Objective: locate the citadel, determine threat, secure, neutralize. Jathri frowned. We just signed peace. Another crusade may fracture unity. We depart quietly, Rand said. Only volunteers. Dal stepped forward. Count me. Valis gave a weary grin. As if I'd let my tinkering off this ship. One by one, captains pledged. The Argæsh envoy paused, then declared, Dominion pride fell by your hand, Commander Rarak, but honor is satisfied. I will guide you past the rift's shoals. Ran inclined his head. Accepted. 8 days outbound. Aurora. Threaded between warped star streams, buoyed by buoyant escort pylons. Ripple fronts hammered like tides. Each pulse bore new symbolism fractal spirals embedding prime numbers, then sequences of star catalog coordinates stretching back before recorded history. Dal parsed them, eyes gleaming. It's a breadcrumb trail an invitation, perhaps a test. Whoever responds must read the cipher. The trail terminated at a volume of starless black, no dust, no light, as though reality had been scoured. In that void hung a single structure, an icosahedral lattice spinning with lugubrious grace, each edge tens of kilometers long, forged from obsidian chrome that swallowed reflection. Valis whistled over the comms. If that's the citadel, it hides its mass well. Gravimetric null reading. Ran ordered a cautious approach. As they neared, the lattice blossomed. Panels irised like petals, revealing inner corridors webbed with lambent filaments. A gateway unfurletta, perfect tetrahedron hollow. A Voisinot heard but projected touched every mind on the bridge. Enter. Shivers trace spines. Dal breathed. What hosts greet without introductions? Valis muttered. Godlings or ghosts. Ran assembled a landing cadredal. Valis, Jathri, 2 Argæsh honor guards, and a buoyant shard embodied in humanoid drone form, thrumming with watchful energy. They embarked in a sleek cutter, eased through the tetrahedral gate, and set down upon a balcony wide enough for a city's forum. No atmosphere, yet their suits relayed crisp audio. A wind of subatomic static, the hush of infinite servers. Light nodes along the floor pulsed as if sensing heartbeats. Dal pointed ahead. Guidance. They followed a corridor that reconfigured at their passing walls drifting open. Ceilings extruding spiral ramps. Valis recorded everything. Lenskai's whirring. At length they entered a chamber, spherical and vast, lined with concentric rings that churned like mechanical orreries. In the center hovered a figure humanoid dimensions but woven of starfire threads, a skein of pure data. The voice resonated again, clearer. Citizens of transient light. Welcome to the Lodestar Vano. Dal's brow furrowed. You are the Citadel? I am its steward. RQ Persistence W13. Ran stepped forward. Steward, your ripples endanger the galaxy. Explain your purpose. Threads brightened. The Lodestar calculates entropy's advance. When universal midnight draws near, it seeks candidates to inherit probability weaving. Your predecessors failed the criteria. Predecessors? Valis echoed. The rings around them shimmered, projecting spectral memories, civilizations crumbling, star forges going dark. Each had reached for the Citadel's gift. Each had faltered. Dal asked softly, And you summoned us to, what? Compete? To demonstrate resilience, cohesion, vision. The test commences now. Metal groaned. Counts of graviton spikes erupted. The landing party braced. Aurora signaled urgent telemetry gravitic shears, tearing at hull. Ran drew his pulsar blade. Define parameters. Survival. Entire rings detached, spinning to form labyrinthine arenas. Portals yawned, spewing simulated catastrophicidal waves of antimatter, phantasms of lost foes, conservator warforms, Argæsh dreadoak knights, spectral images of Horus Hole wreathed in quantum fire. Not illusions. Hard light constructs lethal as reality. The buoyant guardian thrust forward, summoning inertial shields. "Commander," it intoned in harmonic pulses. "Resistance escalates exponentially. Suggest integration vector." Ran slashed through a Horus phantom data, shattered into neon fog, yet sorrow stabbed. "RQ persistence. This cruelty is not assessment. It is mockery." A pause, then the steward's tone softened. Empathy registered. Adapt parameters. The dead apparitions dissolved. New shapes coalesced. Branching probability forks, choices mirrored as glowing doors. Each bore inscriptions recounting potential futures galaxies under tyrant unity, or fragmented but vibrant with diversity. Civilizations surviving by absolute order, or thriving in chaotic cooperation. Dal read them, tears in her eyes. It asks which path we choose: control, or shared stewardship. The Argæsh guard snarled, "Dominion knows order." Jathri countered, "But order without consent is only gilded night." Ran lifted his voice. "Show us a path that honors collective autonomy federation, without coercion." The middle fork brightened, a door edged in undulating silver. The buoyant nodded. Consensus reached. Observation. 98.7% probability. This choice leads to maximized diversity, plus stability. The door slid open. Within lay a chamber small as a stateroom, yet infinite in feel. A pedestal rose, bearing a crystalno larger than a child's fist, swirling with galaxies in miniature. The seat of the lodestar. Wever authority transferable via symbiosis. Who receives? Who receives? Plaso 4. Who receives? %.common29. Silence. Ran looked to Dal, knowing her mind's capacity, her heart. She stepped forward. Jathri approved. The buoyant hummed assent. Even the Argæsh guards lowered their helms in respect. Dal lifted the crystal. Light poured up her arms, feathering into her eyes, her hair. Yet she remained unchanged, in essence only more luminous. Custodian appointed. Exfiltrate before structure relinquishes cohesion. Alarms rose. The citadel rings began collapsing into themselves, mission fulfilled. They sprinted back, thrown by buckling floors, surfing on inertial shields. The cutter barely cleared the gate as the lattice imploded, imploding into a singular marble that winked into quantum haze. On the bridge of Aurora, Dal stood at the forward vista. Data streams coiled around her fingers like tamed serpent's visions of probability she could now taste. Ran approached. "Can you wield it without burning?" She smiled, tired, radiant. "I need no throne, Ran. Only trust. The seed doesn't grant dominion, but guidance and nudges, not shackles. And the galaxy? We'll feel gentle breezes steering away from oblivion, never knowing the hand." Ran felt awe and relief. But a shadow loomed. Responsibility vaster than empire, perched on the soul of the one he loved. He set a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then the steward needs a shield. I'll be that." She leaned into him, heartbeat sinking. Together, news of the Citadel's gift spread slowly, shrouded in myth to prevent frenzy. Legion analysts devised subtle protocols, letting Dal's probability threads weave through policy, disaster prediction, ecological repair. In 6 months, famine world counts halved, rogue star migrations stabilized, even Argæsh internal descent thawed into open forums. But not all welcomed invisible influence. Cells of Technarch zealots accused the Legion of cosmic puppetry. Smugglers hunted rumors of a galaxy-shaping gem. Rival empires sharpened espionage. Valis, overseeing security nets, reported increased infiltrations. The seed broadcasts faint signatures. Predators will chase. Ran convened command. We must decentralize its function. Build conduits across allied worlds. If one node falls, probability flow endures. Dal agreed, though every replication thinned her direct tether, cost her slivers of self. She accepted the burden. The first attack struck Vega's Night Spire observatory. Drones clad in chameleonic armor, wielding null-O disruptors. They slaughtered sentries, hacked core relays. Yet they found only facsimiles. The true conduit had moved days earlier. Their self-detonations scarred only empty halls. A message arrived. Digital venom. Surrender the Weaver seed, or witness star collapse reborn. Signed, the Entropic Choir. Valis traced packet, origin scattered to mislead, but gleaned a motif. Code used by ancient sects, worshipping universal heat death as divine. Their doctrine: accelerate entropy, preempt suffering. Ran clenched fists. We fought star thieves, dominions, spectral titans now, zealots covet oblivion. They must not seize Dal or the seed. Dal laid a calm hand on his. We predicted pushback. Let probability guide trap weaving. They staged decoy convoys. Probability guidance skewed choir spies toward false trails. Yet one cell penetrated Altatherur's lower docks, planting singularity mines. Disaster averted by a heartbeat, but casualties bled morale. Ran tightened security, but each clamp risked the authoritarian path they had rejected. Dal whispered, "Fear feeds choir's argument." So they turned to hope. Publicly, the Legion unveiled transparent governance councils, open data on seed interventions, oversight by multi-species ethics guilds. Confidence surged. Choir recruitment slowed. But their leader, code-named Cinderaf Voice, remained unseen, broadcasting doom-laced sermons from hidden arrays. Probability flows grew jittery near sectors Rho and Sigma, as if destiny itself hesitated. Dal sat in trance, weaving forecasts. Sweat beaded. At last she gasped. Cinderay Voice found a relic in the Dark Gapan Orphan Continuum engine, capable of shearing open event horizons. They plan to detonate in the Vita Lyre. Cluster 10 billion souls. Ran summoned fleets, but the gap's labyrinthine siphons twisted signals. Arrival might be too late. Dal made her decision. I can pre-bias the engine's quantum state prevent detonation, but I must project the seed's full force, revealing my beacon. Cinder Voice will trace me. Rand's refusal died on his tongue. The calculus was stark. Billions saved versus her exposure. He met her gaze, heartsick. I'll stand at your side in the gap. Valis bristled. 2 of our keystones in 1 strike zone? Jathri spoke quietly. Commanders must also be symbols. They plunged into the dark gap with a task group of 5 stealth cutters. No stars gleamed here, only ash-gray nebulae lit by distant quasars. Within a broken moonlit hung the Continuum engine, a cathedral of black spires humming menacingly. Choir frigates circled, broadcasting hymns of annihilation. Ran's cutters approached under cloak. Dal, seated in a medjacradle, linked the seed to the engine's probability manifold. She whispered numbers, coaxing the trigger assembly into false certainties. That fuel was empty. Triggers misaligned. Space-time viscous. Sweat dripped, her eyes rolled white. Suddenly alarms, blared cloak pierced. Choir gravhooks latched. Ripping hulls. Ran ignited plasma jets, ramming a frigate. Explosions flared. But enemy numbers swarm at a hive of fanatics. Cindery Voices broadcast hammered minds. Embrace the final night. Let heat death be peace. Dal convulsed. Her heart flat-aligned once, twice, before stabilizing. She cried out, "Al must hold them!" Ran donned assault armor, led a boarding strike onto the engine's outer ramparts. Pulsey blades clashed with entropy scythes. Argæsh allies fought shoulder-to-shoulder with Jovian rangers. In the core sanctum, Cinderai Voice awaited an emaciated figure draped in gravity lens robes. Eyes, twin black holes. He raised a void staff, Ran parried. Entropy sprays charred armor. Cinder hissed. We free existence from endless grasping. You bind it anew. Ran answered through gritted teeth. Life is the art of radiant defiance. He drove his blade into the staff's nexus. Null crystals shattered. Cindery voice recoiled, screaming silence. At that instant, Dahl's mind reached the engine's heart. She whispered one final nudge. The continuum collapsed inward, diffusing across harmless quanta. The detonation dream died. Dahl slumped, life monitors faint. Ran caught her as choir remnants fled. Cindery voice, dissolved into void motes, creed undone. Back on Altatherur, Dahl lay in regen stasis. Doctors feared neural burnout. The seed hovered above her chest, light dimmed. Ran kept vigil, whispering tales of sunrises, of HEIRS' laughter. After 13 sleepless nights, her eyes opened faint, but aware. She smiled. Probability says you'd stay. He laughed through tears. Defy probability. She lifted a trembling hand. He clasped it. Valis entered, reporting stabilization of all conduit nodes. Choir cells fragmenting without leader. The galaxy crawled once more toward fragile equilibrium. Dahl's voice was soft. Seed will need other bearers, many minds sharing weight. We begin training. Ran nodded. We forge a council of weavers. No one soul holds fate alone. Years cascade. Altatherur's schools teach probability ethics. Buoyant tutors guide children in harmonic logic. The Argæsh Dominion elects representatives. Vega engineers coax barren moons to bloom. Entropy choir survivors turn caretakers of dying stars, ensuring gentle twilight rather than violent dusk. And, on quiet evenings, Ran and Dahl walk beneath the crown's glassy arches, hand in hand, watching newborn gateway seeds blossom roots to untouched galaxies glimmering beyond cosmic horizon. Ran murmurs, "We may live to see other island universes." Dahl's smile glows in starlight. With stewards enough, even infinity can feel like home. The great dark sings around them, not a menace but a canvas, and the lights they guard paint it with unending wonder. A dawn the color of molten platinum crept across the twin skies of Altatherur, and in its lambent reflection the glassy vault of HEIRS Hol's crown shimmered like a living lens, gathering the newborn light and flinging it outward in argent columns that pierced the stratosphere. Beneath that catacomb of radiance, Ran Rarak tasted the cold tang of ionized air and felt destiny coil once more around his hearten, old, familiar serpent that never truly slept. It had been 7 galactic years since the entropic choir's continuum engine unraveled into harmless stellar dust. 7 years since Dal Nara's mind met the precipice of dissolution and stepped back into fragile sunrise. In those years, the Galaxy Weaver Conclave had taken shape. 23 souls, each entrusted with a distributed shard of the Lodestar seed, each bound by a charter etched in quantum oath script that no tyrant's pen could erase. Through them, the seed's subtle tide touched planets like an invisible gardener, pruning probability's blacker thorns and coaxing fledgling hopes into flower. But probability is a fractious servant. A single nudge across the web of future, however gentle, could propagate echoes none could foresee. Ran felt those echoes now in the tremor of subether channels, in half-decoded dispatches from frontier scouts, and the restless glimmers in Dal's night-bright eyes. Something vast stirred outside the mapped skein, something older than the Buoyants, stranger than the conservators, a murmur in the abyss that even watch sages spoke of only in myths. The shadow conflux. He crossed the promenade to where Dal stood at a crystalline balustrade, wind teasing silver strands from her raven hair. Tiny motes of starlight glinted beneath her skin, faint evidence of the seed shard resonating in her blood, though her direct custodianship now passed to the conclave. She had become an attuned waypoint rather than the single conduit. Yet even that light burden weighed heavily. She sensed him and half smiled. "Your steps still fall like thunder when your thoughts race." "I was hoping you wouldn't notice," he said, though there was no mirth behind it. Beyond the rails, Legion Prologue keels drifted in tranquil circuits around the ring, their hulls shimmering with the livery of countless worlds. Peace looked idyllic from afar, and yet Dal's brows knit. The ripple anomalies again? Worse. He offered a holotab. Deep-field spectrographs from the Helian sentries. They recorded a coherent dark energy pulse amplitude off the scale. Source vector points directly to the void rim past the Draco expanse. Dal expanded the feed. Waveforms spiraled like black roses against the grid. Time signature? 38 hours ago. We triangulated with Buoyant subwar core nodal arrays. They concur. He inhaled. Probability divergence beyond anything we modeled. She traced the waveform. Shadow conflux, she whispered. A chill lanced him. The legend told by Buoyant lorekeepers spoke of a realm adjoining the universe at oblique angles, where entropy and negentropy coiled in silent war, birthing predators of probability beings who drank outcome differentials like wine. Once every eon they drifted across cosmic seams, threshing civilizations to feed their hungers. Rand steadied his voice. The Watch has declared row-level threat and summoned all Conclave members to the White Nexus on Altatherur. We must convene in 3 hours. Dal's gaze lifted to the pale sky. So soon. Because if the conflux harvester forms breach our barrier grids, there may not be a 4th hour. The White Nexus had been carved from a single rod of starlight coaxed to bloom in zero gravity, its chambers suffused with luminous filigree that cast no shadows. There, the conclave gathered around a hollow prism projecting currents of living data. Beside Ran and Dal stood Valis Cormolder now, hair shot with Comatugre but eyes no less brilliant. Captain Jathri with her serene poise, High Envoy Zaloth of the Argæsh Dominion, and 18 other weavers of myriad species. At the prism's core floated an avatar of the Watch. A minimal buoyant sigil, a flicker of fractal geometry that modulated to speak. Its voice shimmered like mingled bells. Conclave. Analysis confirms incursive probability predators designated egregores of the shadow conflux. Behavioral archetype. Harvest entropy gradients by inducing cataclysmic bifurcations. Estimated breach probability. 42. Mine. 3% within 50 hours. Murmurs rippled. Ran glanced at Dal. Her eyes remained on the hollow, calm yet intent. Captain Jathri touched a rune. Countermeasures? The avatar rotated. Standard null matter barricades insufficient. Egregores operate on metacausal strata. Recommended defense. Resonant probability inversion. Magnitude gamma 9. Valis whistled. Gamani 9? That energy dwarfs Kaloth's peak output. Rand's jaw set. Could the seed network amplify enough? Dal stepped forward. The shards, synchronized through conclave minds, could create a resonance bubble shield of resolved probability around inhabited space. Envoy Zaloth bristled. And if we fail to calibrate? The echo could ricochet and collapse half the arm. Valis nodded grimly. The lattice math teeters at instability. One misaligned shard, and we trigger the very feast the egregores desire. Rand spread his hands. Then we make alignment faultless. We muster every weaver at a single focus node-combined presence with real-time quantum entangle. That means physically convening near the projected breach vector. Jathri frowned. Draco expanse is uncharted and likely target 0. All the more reason, Rand said. We face them at the threshold, not behind our children's cradles. Silence followed. Then Dal's voice, clear. I volunteer to anchor the resonance. Valis's protest died as Rand met his gaze with silent plea. Turning, Rand addressed the conclave. We have less than 2 days to mobilize. Prep the Aurora Phalanx and Sister Akil, Radiant Spear. Every conclave member boards within 6 hours. He looked around the circle. We may not return, but if we falter, the galaxy falls. One by one, hand-sclawed, scaled. Glovedros, in ascent. Departure from Altatherur tore at Ran. From the Crown's viewport, he watched the planet's oceans sparkle, the towers where he and Dal had shared uncounted dawns receding behind argent engine flares. But the hearts of trillions lay ahead in shadow, waiting for guardians. The two flagships and escort flotilla sprinted along probability vectors sculpted by the seed, slipknots that folded space like origami, propelling them through the Draco expanse in record hours. All the while, Conclave members meditated within Resonance Crypt's biomorphic pods, laced to shard circuitry seeking that delicate mental consonance upon which the shield would depend. Ran prowled Aurora's bridge, trading clipped reports with Valis and Jothri. Flank sensors tracked ghost harmonics. The faint tremor of egregore scouts sliding through possibility membranes. Each echo ratcheted tension. Inside the deepest crypt, Dal knelt upon a dais of crystal vines. Hooded technicians wove biomagnetic filaments across her temples. As Ran entered, she opened her eyes. Light swirled in her irises like slow galaxies. "You should rest," she murmured. He knelt beside her. "Rest when the stars are safe." Her fingers grazed his cheek. "When the resonance peaks, our minds will touch across conclave lines. Promise to anchor me if I drift." "Always," she smiled. "Then I have no fear." They emerged from Slipoak Knot into the Draco Expanse's heart, a region devoid of stellar beacons, lit only by distant Quasar-San abyssal stage, fit for cosmic duel. At its center pulsed a fissure of impossible black, the conflux vector, swirling with shadows that moved against logic. Sensor decks screamed silent warnings as meta-acausal turbulence battered hulls. Radiant spear. Lost external comm arrays within minutes. Escorts shed shielding like molting skins. Yet they held formation, forging deeper until Ran ordered full stop at 20,000 clicks. "Deploy resonance arrays." Valis snapped to cruise. Telescoping spires extruded from flagships, each tip bearing a seed shard encased in diamond loom. Within the crypts, weavers slipped into trance, threads of quantum rapport weaving through thoughtaspace. Dal's pulse slowed. Luminous filaments cascaded from her brow to the shard above. Ran watched reactor readouts climb beyond Kaloth benchmarks. Probability currents surged, shimmering beyond visible spectra space-time, glinting like oil on water. Stability window. 90 seconds, Valis muttered. After that, chain reaction risk skyrockets. Ran toggled fleet-wide. "All craft. Battle stations. Shield will bloom on my mark." The fissure-roiled shadow tendrils whipping outward, each tip crowned with burning negative light. Forms coalesced. Titan silhouettes woven of statistical variance. Eyes like void suns. Egregore Sharvister gods of non-existence. Jothri's hush carried awe and dread. Visual contact, 5 entities. Tendrils lashed, splitting into fractal whips that tore escort corvettes into probability ribbon ships blinked from being. Erased to might-have-beens. Screams crackled, then silenced as crew never existed. "Begin sequence!" Ron roared. Conclave shards ignited. A dome of cerulean luminance vaulted over fleet, and the whole alike. A cathedral of pure determination. The egregores slammed into it. Negative fire shattered and dripped like antimatter rain, but cracks spidered across the dome. In crypt pods, one weaver convulsidan elderly. Syrian, balance faltering. Dal's mind leapt through resonance, cushioning yet her own patterns stuttered. Ran saw stress curves spike. "Valis, redirect auxiliary. Give Dal buoyancy." Rerouting but were near Gamoatan. An egregore plunged a claw into the barrier. Probability arced along its limb universes, birthing and dying in an instant. The barrier buckled. Ran's decision came like lightning. "All batteries fire on my coordinates. Draw them away from central band. Makand. Ho.com. Rand. Rands. Rands. Laser lances. Graviton spears. Neutrino blades. Slashed through vacuum. Searing shadow hides. Egregores recoiled, twin maws shrieking without sound. The moment's reprieve steadied the resonance. Cracks mended. Dal's whisper came across private channel, voice distant. "The dome holds. but counterbalance insufficient. We need anchor inside their singularity. Inside? Ran echoed. She projected vision. Seed resonance funneled into the fissure, knitting its edges closed if a core lodestone wielded within. But insertion required a living mind carrying the Alpha Asharda sacrifice deep behind enemy veil. No, Ran growled. Another way. I see none. Her tone was gentle, resolute. He clenched fist. The memory of Horus's final vigil, flared mentor choosing flame for galaxy's dawn. Now destiny turned to him, with same demand. And he knew. Within seconds he was sprinting through corridors toward the external pylon where the Alpha Hashard pulsed. Security AIs queried. His command overrides parted doors. At the pylon's heart, the shard floated a star frozen in diamond. Dal's voice chased him. Ran, stop. He palmed access runes. You showed me hope. I'll guard it. He gripped the shard. Stellar agony seared nerves, yet awe-flooded sense-time branching in kaleidoscope. He stepped into an escape torpedo bay, sealed hatch, jettisoned toward the fissure. Bridge alarms erupted. Valis shouted, Commander launched! Life sign stable heading straight into conflux. Jathri assumed command with iron calm. In the torpedo cocoon, Ran felt currents, stretch multiverse, winds, tugged spirit and flesh. He opened link to Dal. Anchor me. Her mind enfolded his tears on their shared soul. Not like this. All our paths led here, he answered. Serene. The fissure swallowed the pod, night absolute. Around him, egregore forms loomed like cosmic leviathans, but burdened by buffet of domi energy they hesitated. Ran willed the shard outward. Probability floreyed a blade of living mathematics slicing into darkness. He floated toward a pulsing nexus, heart of the conflux, where all possible shadows converged. Within that maelstrom he sensed whispered memories, worlds the conflux had devoured, dreams quenched for entropy nectar. He planted the shard in that vortex, thrust mind deep. Light erupted silvery gold cascade. Egregores howled, forms unraveling into motes. The fissure began to knit, black threads fusing into stillness. Pain lanced ran existence tearing as tether between real and unreal stretched thin. Dal's presence tightened, refused release. Across fleet comms, resonance soared to harmonic purity. Barrier stabilized, expanding, pushing conflux back beyond edges of time. From afar, Jathri reported, voice trembling. Breach ceiling. Gamma flux dropping. Ha! Ha! Ta! Ta! Cha! 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 Ta! Cha! Cha! Jathri reported, voice trembling. Valis added, dome stable. Casualty curve flattening. Yet Ran's body, cocoon fused to nothing, hovered in the dying heart. Cosmic pressure crushed, dissolution near. He whispered to Dal, light saved. Return. Her cry echoed across thought. I will not leave you. You must guide them. His mind flickered, memories flowed. First meeting on Altatherur. Horus's stern grin. The map's song. Remember dawn. Probability surged. A final implosion yanked shard deeper. Ran felt self-scatter like stardust yet in scattering. He anchored the matrix. The fissure sealed behind him like healed flesh. Aboard Aurora, the conclave barrier relaxed into translucent halo. Egregores gone. Space serene. Dal collapsed from cradle, heart keening with loss no tear could stain faster. Across decks, sailors bowed heads. Horus's crown shone dim, as though mourning. Weeks later, a memorial arc drifted in orbit where the fissure once snarled a ring of alloy petals named Ran Rarek's Resolve. Flames of remembrance burned eternal, fed by quantum tap. The galaxy mourned. The conclave stood renewed but scarred. Dal walked the promenade alone until Valis approached, offering silent support. Her shard glowed pale. She spoke without preamble. He isn't gone. Valis studied her. The singularity consumed. End of crossed, Bibeleus. Valis, placentide. Valis studied her. Not consumed. Transposed. She tapped pendant. I feel him between moments, a lighthouse beyond horizon. The anchor he became threads probability in softer waves. He is part of the loom now. Valis exhaled. Then we follow his example of worthy. She nodded. And perhaps find a path to where he waits. Years stretched again. The conclave thrived, weaving subtle symphonies across clusters. Children grew beneath suns once stolen, now safe. The watch chronicled the defeat of shadow conflux as pivot of cosmic era. Dal, leading yet never ruling, turned hearts toward exploration, beyond old rim lines toward gentle contact, not hungry conquest. On the centennial of the victory, a faint pulse reached Hurus Hol's crown, a ripple glimpsed only by those attuned. Dal, hair now silver-white, yet eyes bright, stood on the old balcony where it all began. The pulse repeated. 3 sharp beats. Pause. Too long. An echo of Rand's private code, long vanished. She smiled into starlight. I'm coming, my love. Above, constellations shimmered, each star a promise. Somewhere beyond known maps, in the hush where universes overlapped, a heartbeat answered steady, steadfast, guiding. The galaxy turned, strewn with dawns yet unwritten, and the stewards watched, kept, and dreamed eternal guardians of the luminous weave, first spun by a commander who believed no night was insurmountable, and a weaver who taught the stars to sing. A hush settled across Hurus Hol's crown after the centennial celebration, as though even the ring's alloy bones held their breath to catch that faint, impossible code pulsing through subether. Dalnara stood alone on the zenith balcony, silver hair haloed in starlight. Pendant shard aglow like a captive dawn against her throat. Beyond the transparent bulwark, the galaxy wheeled in stately splendor. Tranquil. Content. But never still. 3 short. 2 long. Rand's private captain's flash. No one had used it since the night he vanished into the shadow conflux. She closed her eyes. In the hush behind her heartbeat, she felt a tremor. Faint as the brush of butterfly wings, yet unmistakable. The resonance of a living mind, woven through the probability Luma mind she knew as intimately as her own breath. Ran, she whispered, and the name was a vow. Moments later, she strode into the White Nexus's council forum, cloak billowing like comet tail. The assembled weavers looked up. Conversation hushed. Valis Cormnow, Grand Curator of Quantum Security, rose first, augmetic irises widening. Dal, you felt it too. She nodded once. No phantom. The anchor pulse carries phase signature identical to Rand's neural imprint. An Argæsh delegate clicked mandibles in awe. Impossible. The shadow conflux realm collapsed behind the inversion. Collapsed into our known cosmology, yes. Dal returned. But not erased. Probability law suggests residual subhominifold spockets where causal strata thin. She exhaled. Rand must inhabit such a pocket. We can reach him if we dare. Valis scanned the room. Arguments? Faces turned solemn, but no dissent came. Ron Rarak had become legend's sacrifice, lit every academy mural. His quotes guided every officer's oath. To leave him marooned in a metacausal limbo, if rescue were possible, felt unconscionable. Dal's eyes swept the forum. Then authorize expedition. Small, agile, prepared for metacausal flux. The vote was unanimous. Preparations blazed forward with Legion precision. The Starfall's oath, a swift courier spear, only 20 kilometers long yet sporting the newest watchografted metafold drive, was fitted as spearhead. Its hull, spun from living ceramite and seeded with microshards, would double as a mobile resonance node. Valis volunteered as systems architect. Despite protests from subordinates who wished to spare his aging frame, he waved them off with gruff affection. Captain Eunice Kale, a Jovian of indomitable calm, accepted command of bridge operations, while Dahl assumed post of Mission Trinity Scientist, Ambassador, and if required, weapon. A 4U-ship escort, 2 Buoyant shard cutters and twin Argæsh Phantoms completed the task group, each chosen for their speed over brute force. If they found Ran, they must extract swiftly. If they roused unknown horrors, they must flee, swifter still. On the eve of departure, Dahl stood with Valis in the Oath's forward observation blister, watching Dryadox recede. The elder engineer's breath plumed faint condensation against the crystal canopy. I'd hoped to retire building generation habitats, Valis mused, half-smile tugging his weathered lips. But probability rarely honors personal schedules. Dahl placed a hand on his arm. I know the risk, old friend. You've done more than enough. Enough? Valis scoffed, though warmth shone in his eyes. I spent 3 decades tending a loom your heart's conceived. If the other heart that conceived it still beats, I'll be there. She swallowed gratitude too profound for words. 6 jumps carried them beyond mapped lanes, into a scarred corridor once riven by the conflux. Space here shimmered like heat haze. Instruments wavered, showing local constants drifting by fractions. Streams of free-floating probability dust scintillated debris from ancient egregore skin. Valis barked updates. Subgate dimensional drag increasing. Drive coils stable but keep thrust minimal. Shearing risk high. Kell acknowledged, knuckles white on control surfaces. Dahl sat cross-legged in the resonance cradle. Her mind dipped into currents once lethal, now merely treacherous. With each breath, she sifted infinite pathways, seeking one filament that vibrated to Rand's private code. Threphant, flickering behind layers of static like a lullaby half-remembered. She guided the Oath along that filament, helm corrections following her murmured coordinates. Ahead, darkness thickened, no ordinary void, but a swirling umbra whose edges feathered electric indigo. Sensors cried warning, detecting negative mass eddies reminiscent of egregore presence, yet different, quieter, more structured. What am I looking at? Kell asked, voice hushed. Valis stared. A citadel mold, but inverted, like a negative imprint of the lodestar lattice. The anomaly resembled a colossal orchid wrought from night and starlight, petals curving inward, sheltering a core pulsing with silent lightning. Tendrils of probability wove between folds, delicate and lethal. At the near side yawned an aperture hexagonal, luminous with pale crimson. Dahl exhaled. The pulse originates within. Kell flexed gloved fingers. Shall we knock? Dahl shook her head. We've been invited. A single Buoyant cutter and 1 Argæsh Phantom accompanied the Oath through the aperture. The remaining escort stood sentinel outside, drive spines primed. As they crossed the threshold, space inverted. Stars vanished, replaced by translucent planes of geometric aurorae that intersected at impossible angles. The ship seemed to drift through a colossal kaleidoscope where colors resonated audible chords. Kell frowned at instruments. We've crossed into sub-Y manifold omega. Translation protocols stable. He looked back at Dahl. She shivered. Frost spidered across the cradle plinth, despite environmental controls. Inside her mind, a presence bloomed vast, yet familiar. Memories flooded. Rand's laughter in training halls, the taste of ozone on his lips after Kaloth's fires, the last look they'd shared before probability swallowed him. Dahl, the presence murmured. Turn back. The voice carried no fear, only grave urgency. She answered silently. Not without you. A pauseous sigh of stars colliding. This realm anchors the conflux husk. My presence keeps the gate sealed. If I leave, there are other anchors, she replied. We can weave a substitute as you once did. Valis's voice intruded. External geometry collapsing. Orchidean petals curling inward closing. Kale's command muscles flexed. We will be trapped. Dahl deliberated a heartbeat. Advance. The core awaits. They navigated corridors of fractal crystal. At each turn, panels ignited, painting history. Ran, stepping into the fissure, lodging the Altatherur shard. Egregores dissolving, the domino ceiling snapping behind him. But the story continued. His consciousness diffused throughout the conflux shell, guiding entropy currents into stable torpor. Centuries of subjective time compressed into moments. He'd become warden of a prison and prisoner within it. At last they reached a chamber spherical and serene. At its center floated Ranrarik. He appeared as she last saw him. Tall, lean, dark hair tousled, eyes fierce as Novacore. Yet his outline shimmered, as if carved from living starlight. The Alpha Shard pierced his chest like a luminous dagger. Threads of probability radiating from the wound to lattice overhead. Dal approached, tears unheeded. Ran. He smiled, sorrow and joy entwined. "You stubborn star tamer." She reached to touch him. Her hand passed through a glimmering barrier. "It's a projection," Valis realized, scanning. Ran nodded. "My true form is diffused bound to anchor nodes. Remove the shard, I cohere. But the conflux husk reawakens." Kel straightened. "We came prepared." He gestured. Buoyant drones floated forward, carrying a crystal torus, the anchor mandala, a device engineered by conclave sages to substitute a collective resonance for Ran's singular tether. If deployed, 12 remote seed shards already entangled with conclave weaverswood assume the load. Valis keyed sequence. Mandala will embed into lattice. Draw current from distributed councils. You'll be free. Ran's gaze softened. "And you're certain the galaxy can shoulder that strain?" Dal stepped within the shimmering limit. "We learned, beloved. A council of millions weighs the weave now. No single soul will carry your burden again." For long moments he searched her face. Then, with a sigh, he nodded. The mandala ascended, petals unfurling. Resonance surged. Dal felt weavers across the galaxy focusing, threads coalescing into a choir of intent. The lattice shuddered. Lines of power rerouted from Ran's chest into the torus. The shard dimmed, withdrew like a sunset sword. Ran's form wavered, solidifying color flooding flesh anew. Alarms blared. External hull quaked. Negative mass eddies spiked. Keel barked into comms. "All ships. Prepare emergency metafold." But Ran lifted a hand. "No abrupt fold. We must guide the husk into nullospace graveyard or risk fissures." He closed eyes, weaving coordinates. Dal and Valis joined, funneling mandala guidance. A corridor of gentle entropy opened an exit path to a dead pocket dimension. The Starfall's oath took point, towing the chrysalis with graviton tethers. Buoyant and Argæsh ships flanked, projectors humming overtime. Behind, the conflux orchid trembled on collapse. Hours stretched. At corridor terminus, the husk detached, drifting into silent vacancy, where it would fade across millennia. Ran exhaled. Gate closed. He turned feet Shakya as if gravity rediscovered. Dal caught him, laughter choked by tears. Around them crew erupted in cheers. Homecoming eclipsed any pageant Altatherur had known. Ships of every allied nation lined approach paths. Buoyant choirs wove light symphonies across cloud tops. Children recited Ran's deeds from memory. But pomp mattered little. What mattered was the hand now warm in Dal's, the steady beat beneath scars where Alpha Shard once pierced. In a quiet garden inside Huru's Hull's crown, Ran met Valis beneath creeper vines of luminous ivy. The engineer offered a flask of aged Jovian sun whiskey. "You missed the formal toasts," Valis quipped. Ran smirked. "Crowds drain me faster than shadow gods." He lifted flask in salute. "To debt unpaid." Valis's eyes glistened. Paid in full and compounded interest. They drank. Weeks turned to months. Integration therapy healed Ran's fractal memories. Dal never left his side. Together they walked moonlit promenades, planning futures rather than guarding dawn's threshold every breath. Yet guardians they remained. One evening, Ran, Seat on balcony rail, asked softly, "When next crisis comes, and it will, how do we answer without surrendering ourselves again?" Dal considered. "By cultivating stewards. Multiply courage until sacrifice divides. Build systems where hope doesn't hinge on lone heroes." He slipped an arm around her. "Then let's start tomorrow." They convened the Stellar Seminary, academies across 10 worlds where children learned not only propulsion vectors and diplomatic nuance, but probability ethics, empathy algorithms, and the cost of a single reckless decision. Graduates took oaths as light bearers, roving custodians who listened before they shot, who healed rifts of thought before rifts of space. When marauding quantum raiders threatened the Orion fringe, lightbearers negotiated restitution within a single month. When a pulsar swarm destabilized trade lanes, lightbearer fleets redirected radiation streams harmlessly. No singular hero soared, thousands of small ones did. And though murmurs of resentment surfaced those who missed the bright simplicity of saviors, Ran and Dal met them with humility, reminding all that dawn belonged to everyone willing to tend its fires. Years later, under 20-sun twilight, Ran stood again at the crown's edge, while Dal watched students test flight suits in low-gravity rings. He murmured, "Do you ever ache for the old fury? The rush of void battles?" She smiled, threading fingers through his. "Sometimes. But then I remember the faces of these children. Fury built the stage. Peace writes the play." A signal pinged his wristcom-coded burst from watch outposts. An anomalous star well beyond Perseid boundary flickering into instability. Ran chuckled. The universe still writes sequels. Dal's eyes sparkled. "And we still love a good adventure." He tapped comm to Seminary Dispatch. "Assemble Lightbearer Expeditionary Unit 7. Senior consultants Rarak and Nara volunteer as advisors." Dal leaned in, whispering, "Advisors? Well," he murmured, kissing her brow, "let's not steal their glory, but someone must ensure they pack extra socks." She laughed, clear, boundless. The cosmos churned, ever pregnant with marvel and menace. But beneath Horus Hol's crown hope burned bright, tended by hands many and steady. Through shared guardianship, the galaxy learned that light need not be won anew, each dawn by blood and fire. It could be shepherded by wisdom and community, by stories remembered and futures imagined together. And somewhere among the twining star roads yet to blaze, probability hummed a gentle refrain, neither prophecy nor command, but promise: no night is final, while hearts remain to kindle morning. Under the cold quartzite span of Horus Hol's crown, the training decks vibrated with the excited tumbling of cadets, yet on the command dais Ran Rarak felt a familiar, sharper pulse humming through the metal beneath his boots. It was the resonance of imminent imperativa call too urgent for delegation. The watch's priority burst throbbed once more on his wristcom. Starwell anomaly perced beyond. Probability swing. Omega class. Request senior advisory presence. Omega, a class, a category reserved for paradox thresholds and events that could elastically rewrite causality for an entire spiral arm. Dalnara glided to his side, cloak rippling like moonlit water. "Expeditionary Unit 7 is already assembling," she said, reading the same dispatch on her pendant's inner screen. "But the watch indicates an unknown attractor, accelerating the well's instability. They want a weaver on scene." Ran exhaled, half sigh, half thrill. "Then the lecture on gravitic harmonics will have to wait. Summon Kel. Tell Valis to prep the Starfall's Oath for a fast dash." Dal's smile held wry affection. "He complains about retirement, but I think Valis keeps the engines hot precisely for this." Jump 1. Sanguine Rift. The Oath split the indigo depths of the Sanguine Rift like a spear of glittering mercury, slip snots snapping in her wake. On the bridge, Captain Eunice Kale rode the Opuglass command cradle with effortless poise, his dark Jovian eyes fixed on roaming anomalies' white torches flickering in the rift's blood-drugged dust. Each torch was the pyre of a sun devoured by quantum erosion centuries ago. Their epicenters pulsed warnings. All things end think fast. Valiscorm hunched at the engineering console, fingers dancing across Holloway sliders. Microshards inside the Oath's hull responded with crystalline chimes, trimming energy arcs so thin they could slice atoms. Age had stooped his spine yet sharpened his humor. As a turbulent spike shuddered through the deck, he grunted. If the well's bleed is worse than these eddies, I'll petition the watch to rename Omega Class to obnoxiously inconvenient. Ran allowed a half smile, but his gaze lingered on Dal. She sat in a meditative stance at the Navualtar, eyes closed, skin suffused with soft inner light. Threads of probability glimmered around her like nebular silk finer than when she had carried the entire Lodestar seed, yet unmistakably potent. Status? Ran asked quietly. Dal opened her eyes. Galaxies whirled in their depths. The star well is feeding on adjacent vacuum fluctuations rapidly. Something is riffling through the entropic deck, like a gambler stacking odds. Keel swore under breath. A gambler? Or a parasite, Dal said, voice taut. Either way, it's winning. Jump 3. Perseid Frontier. The Perseid beyond was an expanse of Silencino star clusters, no nebular blooms. Only a solitary shimmer. The Starwell, a roiling whirlpool of luminous plasma threading reality's seams. Around it, space itself sagged inward, as though a great hand were squeezing the cosmos from the outside. Holoescopes enlarged the image. A white-hot corona spiraled into a central abyss, so dark sensors rendered negative values, something less than nothing. The well siphoned energy from the quantum foam beneath spacetime, threatening to unravel mass-energy conversion laws within 200 parsecs. Gravitic readings escalating by the minute. Valis muttered. If this breach reaches threshold, we could see a chain collapse of stellar architecture. Suns torn into extra-dimensional sluices. Rand's jaw set. Unit 7 report. Comm screens populated with eager faces 30 light-bearer craft in arrow formation. Hulls bearing multicolored insignia of worlds once separated by suspicion. Their squad leader, a bright-wide Venusian named Katha Sol, saluted. Ready for hazard insertion, senior advisors. Rand nodded. Objective. Stabilize well perimeter. Identify attractor. Neutralize or negotiate. Remember every micro-adjustment to probability can ripple. Respect the weave. Katha grinned. We'll tiptoe through eternity, sir. Dal overlaid a shimmering wreath of vectors around the well. Hiriite nodes form a symmetry lock. Anchor our probability field there. The Mandala network can nail it flat long enough for analysis. The light-bearer craft darted off, weaving nets of graviton filaments like luminous ribbon dancers. The Oath hung back, sensors alive. Minutes crawled. Node anchors snapped into place, forging an octagonal lattice around the starwell. Instability slowed. Corona brightening. Abyss shrinking. Valis exhaled. Looks promising. Then alarms howled shrill, metallic. Kel's pixels widened. Foreign insert. Something just emerged. Inside the lock grid. Rand's gut twisted. On the main display, an object unfurled sleek, black mirror plating etched with archaic sigils. It resembled a needle starship fused with a cathedral spire. At its prow burned a violet eye, leaking tendrils of code-like lives. Dal's breath caught. That's no parasite. That's an architect wraith. The name fell like a hammer. Even Valis paled. Centuries earlier, legend whispered of the architect's primordial engineers who once carved cosmic constants, then vanished beyond causal horizons. Wraiths, rumored fragments of their logic, were thought long extinct. But the presence before them radiated purpose older than sentience itself. The Wraith projected an encryption burst waves of super-evidence mathematics that collapsed half the light-bearer sensors. One node anchor blinked out. The starwell flared, gaining ground. Unit 7, defensive pattern Theta, Katha shouted. But come backscatter snapped to static. 3 craft spun helplessly into the well's gravity tide. Rand slammed a fist on the rail. Kel, close distance. We'll shield with micro-Zijard armor. Dal counter-reason crypt? She nodded, fingers scribing sigils in midair. Quantum syllables burst from the oath. His emitters, erecting a lattice of negation to parry the Wraith's code. For a tense heartbeat, equations dueled in open space, like dueling dragons of light. Valis rerouted power to resonance array. If we can slip our mandala feed into that thing's glyph stream, maybe we can talk to it. Assuming it wants conversation, Kel muttered. Everything that builds can be persuaded, Dal said, eyes blazing. Architects wove order, not chaos. Rand touched her shoulder. Be quick. Unit 7's down to 24. The Wraith pulsed again an ultraviolet spear that sliced through 2 more anchors. The starwell surged, horizon swelling. Dal's voice rose, clear. Melodic spoke in triacotonal chords, each note a probability vector. The mandala echoed, translating her plea into prime constant sequences. For an instant, the Wraith paused. Its violet eye dilated. A whisper brushed every mind on the oath. Rand's heart hammered. Dal answered in thought. Existence is the capacity for emergent harmony. Silence. Then, purpose of harmony? To allow complexity to flourish without annihilation. The Wraith processed, glyphs flickering. Valis hissed, entropy crest rising, again debating us. While the well devours space-time. Dal's brow beaded sweat. She sent another surge. Harmony begets novelty. Without novelty, the architect dream stagnates. The Wraith's hull rippled like water struck by wind. Equivocal. Harvesting energy ensures continuance. Dal glanced at Ran. He gave a curt nod. She broadcast one final vector, weaving Ran's memory. Horus's sacrifice, the galaxy's healing. Life's continuance requires not just energy but freedom. The violet eye dimmed. Heartbeats roared in collective ears. Then the Wraith folded its spire arms, retracting code tendrils. It pivoted. Sight fixed upon the starwell. Transaction accepted transfer protocol. Lightning cascaded from the Wraith into the abyss, siphoning raw chaos. The starwell shrank visibly, as though gulped by some unseen throat inside the spire. Node anchors stabilized, remaining light-bearer craft regrouped, beams reinforcing lattice. Minutes later, the well was a mere flicker. Then a wink. Then dark. Silence fell across space. The Wraith turned once more, toward the oath. Probability, harmony, parameter, adopted. Observer matrix complete. Its eye flared a brilliant white gratitude, and the spire imploded into a point of impossible density that zipped away faster than any slipknot. Then nothing but cosmic hush. Katha Sol's voice crackled, breathless. Starwell neutralized. Unit 7 casualty count. 4 lost craft. 9 personnel. Remainder secure. Rand closed his eyes, pain for the lost mingling with relief for the saved. Retrieve debris. Honor fallen. Good flying. Light bearers. Valis sagged at console. We just negotiated with a prea-cosmic ghost. Dal leaned against Ran, exhausted smile on her lips. And convinced it. Freedom matters. Kel let out a long exhale. So ends another quiet consultancy. Ran laughed low, rueful. Quiet as supernova in a library. Epilogue. Light to elsewhere. Back on Altatherur, mourning banners for Unit 7's fallen hung beside fresh banners celebrating the Starwell's closure. The Watch issued a communique deeming the Architect Wraith encounter non-hostile, potentially ally, and established a new research accord, inviting light-bearers and buoyant scholars to prepare for further dialogues should another Wraith appear. Dal and Ran sat in the garden courtyard where evening petals glowed faintly bioluminescent. Wind carried scents of salt and crystal dust. Valis approached, datapad under his arm, gray eyes twinkling. The Wraith left a trail, he said, tapping a spiral glyph. Sub-like light, but decipherable. A map, perhaps, to the Architect's hemicycle. Ran raised a brow. Another expedition? Valis grunted. Eventually. but I told the watch they'd best train another generation first. We're advisors, remember? Rand slipped an arm around Dal's waist. Advisors who can't resist starlight. Dal rested her head on his shoulder. We'll go when the weave is ready and when the light-bearers can fly without looking back to see if we approve. Valis saluted with mock gravity. I look forward to that day and the retirement that keeps eluding me. They laughed, old friends bound by trials beyond reckoning. Overhead, twin moons slid past one another, and for a moment their haloed overlap painted the courtyard silver. Dal lifted her pendant shard. It shimmered, echoing the moons. Probability hums, she whispered. Rand squeezed her hand. Let it sing. We'll keep listening. Beyond Hurus Hol's crown, the galaxy spun on vast, perilous, resplendent. Somewhere in its outermost dark, other wonders waited. Architect relics dreaming beneath quantum frost, forgotten peoples guarding untold songs, mysteries grand enough to pull even a weary commander and his unwavering weaver into one more voyage. But tonight on Altatherur the air was gentle, the light forgiving, and the stars overhead seemed to breathe easy looked after by many hands, many hearts, each pledged to ensure that no shadow would ever again swallow a dawn without a legion of guardians to chase it back. And in that deep, peaceful hush, Ranrarak and Dal Nara found, at last, a measure of rest until destiny's next whisper called them once more into the radiant dark. Ranrarak woke before Altatherur's double dawn, restless. Some twitch in the Weavia minor snag, only a weaver could feel had stirred him from sleep. Dal still drifted unfazed beside him, her breathing slow, her silver hair fanned across the pillow like starlight spilled onto velvet. He smiled, brushed a strand from her cheek, then slipped quietly out of their quarters. The crown's outer promenade smelled of ozone and night-blooming Christoflora. Below, training decks lay still, their rings of practice satellites dimmed to standby glow. In that hush, he probed the probability lattice, seeking the snag. It came as a tiny discordant hum, a divergence route in the Perseid holonetta, single encrypted squawk, flagged by light-bearer outpost Ho9. Rand requested a decrypt. The Crown's sapient routers obliged. Message header: Guardian's Candle. The distress tag reserved for first contact emergencies. Payload fragment. Starless Place Architect Lexicon Signatures Lost Cohort Request Extraction Event Horizon Forming Coordinates follow. Coordinates were half garbage, half intelligible. Rand's pulse quickened. The Architect Wraith from the Starwell had left its spiral map. Various Lightbearer detachments were already tracking the route. A cohort evidently took the bait and strayed deep into unknown domain. Dal will throttle them, he muttered, though pride warred with worry. Unit 7's rookies, now veterans, knew better than to sprint blind into cosmic myth. Still, a Guardian's candle was never lit lightly. Footfalls rang behind him. Dal approached in flight suit splacks, cloak hanging loose. Couldn't sleep, she said. Eyes bright, alert. She felt it too. Lost cohort, he said, handing the decrypt. She scanned. Edge of the Architect's spiral. These coordinates are partial something bent the outbound burst mid-route. Event horizon forming, he echoed. Sounds like a boundary bubble. Same kind of negative mass cage the Wraith used to siphon the Starwell. Dal's jaw hardened. We move. Muster. Within 3 hours, the Starfall's oath idled on Crown's high spindle. Valis Corm shuffled up the boarding ramp, muttering about patient research he could never finish. Keel followed, crisp as starched steel. Cathasol and 4 Lightbearer craft volunteered, each craft crewed by her trusted triad. Venusian pilot, Terran engineer, Selenite empathy officer. No buoyant cruisers this time. Watch policy deemed the Architect's spiral too delicate for heavy tonnage. But a single shardform observer accompanied, a slender humanoid of translucent crystal named Echo Oo Quietus Skies. Its voice a faint wind chime. They launched while Altatherur's second sun was still kissing the horizon. In the wake, golden light glimmered across the hull like a benediction. The spiral edge, 5 jumps, vaulted them past the Starwell graveyard, past the husk corridor, into subspace channels faintly marked by the Wraith's departing signature. Each channel looked like a tunnel of fading aurora, lanes in which time's arrow felt rubbery, where seconds could elongate or fold without warning. Valis balanced equations, tacking deftly. Whenever one lane threatened to pinch, he'd flicker inverse warp thrusters, popping them sideways into a fresher seam. After the fourth seam, they emerged into a volume Ran had never seen charted. A spherical auditorium of black glass, studded with isometric lights, spaced in Fibonacci shells. Outsized numbers floated above each light, streaming glyphs that looked like calculus performing ballet. Katha whistled. A coordinate grid architect scale. They number vastness in prime spirals. The distress coordinates pointed toward a node near the auditorium's south pole. The Oath and escorts accelerated. Soon the grid's symmetry fractured. At node RRW17, FA, a bulge of darkness pulsed darker than vacuum, edged with crimson lace. Sensors screamed, Omega negative mass, far exceeding Starwell readings. Inside that bulge flickered, shattered Lightbearer beacon's ID tags of 3 missing craft. Ran felt his stomach drop. He opened a wideband hail. Katha Cohort, Unit 9. Respond. Only static, laced with faint telepathy squeal-spanic ghosts. Dal's eyes glassed. They're alive barely, but suspended in probability mulch. The bulge is an architect crucible. Echo of Quiet as Skies stepped forward, facets dim. Warning: crucible sublayers replicate existential tests. Survivors may face recursive reality folds. Ran gripped the rail. We cut them free. Crucible approach. Keel break the oath. 11 clicks out. 2 Lightbearer craft flanked, each spooling probability deflectors. The bulge fought them like an undertow space bent into Mobius arcs, threatening to scatter orientation. Valis keyed hull shards to rotate in contraphase, forming a shimmering shell around the oath. Immediately drag bled off. They knifed inside the crucible. Within, environment shifted. Stars returned, but wrong constellations fractal, repeating at every scale. Deck plates creaked. Gravity alternated between lunar and Jovian with each second. Dal anchored the mandala. A low hum that steadied physics within a 20-ameter sphere. Crew breathed easier. A debris field drifted ahead. 2 Lightbearer scouts cracked like eggshells, hulls folded inside out. Among flotsam, 3 survival pods winked red. Kale maneuvered, magnet beaming pods aboard. Metatechs sliced open hatches. Inside lay 5 cadets in stasis trauma, eyes wide with lingering nightmare. One, a Kalian blood chieftain's daughter, rasped. Walls kept changing. Each door led us back but older. Time kept repeating. Ran pressed a flask of electrolyte to her lips. Breathe. You're safe. 110. Rhine. She shook. Not safe. Core Labyrinth Captain Avari took beacon deeper. Event horizon, right behind. Ran looked to Dal. She nodded. 1 craft still inside. He addressed Kel. Plot intercept. We're finishing this. Labyrinth core. The crucible's heart resembled a colossal cityscape made of translucent basalt, towers curling like petrified tornadoes. A single corridor opened between spires, floor carved with prime glyphs racing away. Far along that corridor flickered a stranded craft lodged in a prismatic snare. Avari's voice crackled on narrowy band. Unit 9, is that you? Engines fused, temporal loops at static. Hurry flux rising. The snare resembled a spiderweb of hard light. Within its threads, time itself writhed. The craft flickered through undulating ages brand anew, scorched, brand anew again caught between past and future. Valis whispered, Architect trap, a cause-effect resonance cage. We cut the right strand, we free them. Wrong strand, we shatter local time, maybe ourselves. Ran-eyed doll. She closed her eyes, fingers brushing her pendant. Probability threads blossomed outward, sampling outcomes. Sweat beaded. Seconds passed like hours until she pointed. That one. A thread glowing faint aqua, strung between two glyph stones. Rand signaled Katha's flanking craft. Synchronized graviton microlances on my mark. Marks aligned. 3 spears of compressed field stabbed the strand. A sound like shattering bells rang across the corridor. The web unraveled, dissolving into motes. Avari's craft dropped free. Engines dead but intact. Cheers erupted. Yet the ground trembled. The corridor's glyph floor split as though displeased. Spools of darkness erupted in spirals. Architect defense response. Echo's crystal body lit. Departure imperative. Kel reversed thrust. The corridor, however, now coiled inward like a tightening spring. Dal channeled mandala energy outward, in a concussive pulse space uncurled. Corridor's edges faltered. In the opening, oath. As engines flared, carriers slipped through with centimeters to spare. The corridor sealed behind, imprisoning the storm. Seconds later, the bulge itself caved inward, collapsing to a point, then winked out. In the sudden normality of open auditorium void, survivors exhaled. Aftermath. Back aboard the Oath, Avari debriefed, voice hoarse. The crucible lured us by flashing the Wraith's map. Inside, we saw illusions of architect devices then. Everything folded. I glimpsed blueprints in the walls. Star gengenes, probability forges, things beyond telling. Rand nodded grimly. The Wraither, its creator, saw baiting us. Testing devotion. Echo Ofo of Quieted Skies offered theory. Crucible appears to assess harmonic alignment. Those who survive become candidates for deeper architect communion. Valis rubbed temples. Meaning we passed another test, whether we liked it or not. Dal gazed across black glass lights. Each trial escalates in complexity. If we keep responding, we edge closer to ancient architect, secret sand, unknown chords of risk. Rand considered. At his core, a thrill stirred on part hunter's curiosity, 1 part commander's dread. Maybe secrets the galaxy will need when next Omega-class giant knocks. Dal smiled sadly. Or secrets that might tear the weave if grasped unprepared. Silence reigned until Katha transmitted from escort. Nav beacons stable. Cohort casualties minimal. Orders? Rand looked to his crew. We return home with survivors. We share data. Then, entire conclave votes. Continue deeper, or pause. Valis exhaled. Sensible. For once. Don't worry. Rand chuckled. The universe won't run out of riddles while we debate. Dal kissed his cheek. And if it does, you'll chase its shadow until another dawn. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, eyes lingering on the auditorium as it faded behind them. Lights winked sequentially almost, like blinking farewell or invitation. Return flight. During the long homeward slipstreams, Rand recorded personal log entries, gratitude for Unit 9's resilience, grief for lost cadets, musings on architect motives. Dal conducted memory therapy circles for traumatized survivors, weaving calm probabilities to defang nightmare loops. Valis isolated fragments of glyph code captured during the corridor collapse. One string, when run through quantum emulator, unfolded into a simple phrase, Gate of Dawn. Kel postulated it might reference a next waypoint beyond the spiral. Echo countered. Or a warning only, those who accept Dawn's burden may cross. Rand tucked that phrase into a private mental shelf for the conclave debate ahead. Altatherur Council of Many Fires. Conclave gathering overtook the crown crowds of lightbearers, watch gurus, planetary delegates. Hollows of the Crucible played alongside the Starwell victory, contrasting triumph and peril. Dal presented findings, pattern of architect trials, risks of psychological attrition, potential for civilization and level uplift. Debate flooded days. The youth faction argued for pressing onward knowledge is shield and torch. The caution faction sought greater redundancy. No people should hinge destiny on deciphering alien inheritance too swiftly. Ran listened. He felt both factions echo within him. Ran the daredevil from Titan's nav school. Ran the sober commander who'd lost comrades to cosmic madness. When the floor yielded, he simply said, "Let the galaxy choose. Not just this chamber. Hold a referendum across the Commonwealth. Give every world a voice, because any gift gained or catastrophe triggered will belong to them all." Gasps. Planetary referenda were rare-time-consuming, messy, but momentum caught. The hall approved. Voting beams shot across the network. Ballots offered in every language, every symbol. Weeks passed. Return tallies shocked even pessimists. 62% in favor of continuing measured architect engagement under stipulation of transparent oversight and voluntary crew posts. Even frontier worlds scarred by egregore nightmares voted yes hope, outweighing fear. Thus, the conclave drafted the Architect Protocols, tri-hum-layer safeguards, mental resilience regimens, and rotating leadership to prevent single-mind burnout. Valis muttered to Ran after signing, "Bureaucracy of great ambition, but at least never dull." Ceremony on the crown? That evening, lanterns floated skyward crystals filled with harmless plasma, each bearing the names of those fallen in crucible rescue. Children of all species released them together, a tide of soft light that drifted to the crown's apex, then shimmered into a living constellation. Ran watched beside Dal. Music strings and alien flutes rose from amphitheaters below. Dal's hand found his. "Tomorrow we recruit volunteers. Beyond that, Gate of Dawn, who knows?" He kissed her knuckles. "We carry light. Whatever waits, it will see our torches first." She laughed, gentle and fierce. "And behind us, a galaxy ready to pull us back if the darkness tries to swallow us." Ran gazed at the drifting lantern-stinny suns borne on fragile shells and communal breath. Some ascended unnoticed into shadow, others burst into glorious color. Yet everyone rose, defying gravity with a hint of flame. The commander felt their dance mirror, his pulse courage laced with caution. Grief braided to wonderland. He knew the road ahead stretched bright and perilous, stitched by the weave that countless souls now tended. "Ready for your next lecture?" Dal teased. Ran chuckled. "I suppose gravitic harmonics can wait another dawn." Tomorrow's topic: how to greet a god politely. Lantern light painted her smile gold. Lesson 1. Bring coffee. Laughing, they turned toward the council halls, where midnight strategy hummed and stars themselves seemed to lean close, eager to witness the next unfolding chapter of guardianship, daring, and the inexhaustible dance between dawn and the dark. Twin dawns had scarcely kissed the lattice spires of Altatherur before the crown's great hangar bays shivered with fresh industry. Plasma welders hissed, coupling rings locked with the clack of titanic gears, and the jeweled hull of the Starfall's Oath, still warm from her crucible sortie, accepted a new prow segment, a dove-white, patella-shaped module whose filigreed ribs pulsed with watch-seated quanta. It was called the Auric Gateway Sconce, half sensor, half shield, and wholly untested. From an observation gantry, Ran Rarak watched riggers dance along maglines, riveting each gleaming rib. Sparks flurried like golden snow. Beside him, Dalnara stood in simple flight blacks, the shawl of her silver hair bundled beneath a utility cap. She leaned over the rail, eyes bright with admiration and worry entwined. "Valis swears that Sconce can hold a micro-singularity behind a diffraction prism," she murmured. "I believe him. But I'd feel better if he used brand new parts, instead of scrap from the crucible salvage." Ran chuckled, low and wry. If Valis had his way, he'd weld half the galaxy into one ship just to see if it holds atmosphere. He sobered, gaze slipping to the busy deck. "When do the first civilian observers arrive?" "Within the hour," Dal replied. 7 representatives from worlds that voted yes. The conclave demanded transparency, so they'll embed as oversight. One of them is a philosopher-poet from the Delphic Isles. She asked if the jump corridors have windows large enough for stars to whisper sonnets through. Ran arched an eyebrow. Let's hope the architects appreciate verse. A rumble echoed up the gantry steps. Valus Corm emerged, wiping ion soot from his hands. Though age bent him, his laugh rang like struck bronze. Windows? Stars whisper? Ha! Tell her she'll need a reinforced visor or risk having her metaphors fused straight into her temporal lobes. Valus, Ran greeted. Final diagnostics? The engineer tapped a crystal slate. Hull harmonics within 2 sigma. The mandala oscillator is nested inside the sconce, cycling at stable amplitude. Good news. We can now modulate probability fields without frying half the circuitry. Bad news. It drinks power like a titanium iso-aux in summer heat. We'll rely on escort vessels for auxiliary feed. Dal slid her hand across the rail. Escorts are eager. Catha Sol's Unit 9 retained 3 ships, but new volunteers arrived. 2 buoyant skiffs, 1 Argæsh scout, and a civilian ranger from Calero with a hull full of rooty stock seedlings. She smiled faintly. They prefer to garden on dead moons and call it cosmic bonsai. Gardeners at the gate of dawn, Ran mused. Ironic or perfect? Both, Valus grinned. Just remember, if the architects open that gate wide, we may need more than guns. We might need gardeners, poets, diplomats, and stubborn engineers. Ran's gaze lingered on the sconce. And fools willing to walk first. Launch. When the sun pair crowned the crown's girdled horizon, the expedition convoy unfurled like a silver bouquet. At its core glided the Starfall's oath, prowess conce blazing soft auric light. Flanking her, the buoyant skiffs shimmered translucent mauve. The Argæsh scout bristled with slender fins, and Unit 9's light-bearers traced protective arcs. Behind the civilian ranger, Greenfire, trailed a wake of pollen-spark nanodrones rooty stock, acclimating to vacuum nuance. Altatherur vanished beneath layers of slipschnot haze. Starlines elongated to needles, then reality folded, and the convoy slid into the architect's spiral. Inside fold space corridors, the new sconce bloomed, projecting probability shields like overlapping lotus petals. Every time a corridor pinched, petals flared, absorbing torsion. Ran felt the deck hum, but no tremor reached his boots. Valus's voice crackled over the command mesh. So far, the old scrap holds. Dal guided with meditative focus, the mandala's signature thrumming in her pulse. Around her, civilian observers clustered scribing notes, capturing holograms, eyes wide whenever aurora storms rippled through bulkheads like ghost seascapes. The poet from Delphic Isles indeed pressed a palm to a wide viewport and murmured couplets to the starlight, her tears drifting weightless. Ran let them witness. Transparency wielded its own armor. The gate of dawn. Coordinates resolved abruptly. The corridor fell away, and the convoy emerged into emptiness save for one colossal structure. Where the crucible auditorium had been orderly geometry, the gate of dawn was wild majesty. Imagine a ring larger than Jupiter's orbit, woven of sunfire filaments and obsidian strata. In its center swirled a disk of swirling pastel mist color, reminiscent of dawn on 20 worlds at once. 6 spires rose from the ring's circumference, each tipped with blazing crystals whose cores pulsed like slow heartbeats. Even Valus fell silent. Kel whispered, "Power signature surpasses any measured anomaly." Buoyant skiffs sang harmonic chordsa salutation from watchers to ancestors unknown. The ring's crystals brightened, and a band of glyphs circled the inner rim, translating across tongues. Pilgrims who seed the morning, whose torches many, and whose hearts one enter by choice. Catha Sol exhaled. An invitation. Ran opened fleet channel. Proceed with caution. Probability dampers to half. Civilian observers remain aboard the Oath, until path secured. Dal attuned the sconce, lotus petals folded inward, shaping into a single lance of auric fire that pointed toward the nearest spire. With a gentle nudge, the Oath advanced. Escorts mirrored. As they neared, the spire's tip irised, revealing a tunnel lined with shifting crystal facets, each facet reflecting alternate versions of the approaching ships. Some older, some scorched, some impossibly new. A frisson crawled over Rand's skin. Inside, gravity ceased. Gauges flatlined to zero while inertial mass remained. The oath glided like thought. Outside, crystals parted, forming ribbons that guided them deeper. Chamber of seeds. The tunnel widened into a hollow sphere. Its interior dappled with floating orbs of light hundreds, each orb a scale model of an unfamiliar galaxy. Color palettes varied. Some golden spirals, others red scatterings. A few pallid lattices stretched thin. A deep voice resonated, neither mechanical nor telepathic, but somewhere between. Observe. These are the gardens we tended before your epoch, before your matter cooled. Each seed a tapestry of possibility. Some flourished. Some failed. Dal's breath shook. Architect caretaker? The voice replied, Caretaker, yes. Wraith was my envoy. Crucible, my dean. You survived. Thus you may learn. But no. Knowledge has mass. Hearts that carry it must bear the weight. Rand steadied himself. We accept the burden. Then choose. One seed your weave will nurture. Through it you may ascend, or you may break. Suddenly, a dozen orbs drifted closer, halos brightening. Holo-readouts auto-translated each. Elysian Helix. Proto-Age galaxy, with fluid space-time constants. Shadowlace cluster. Stars forged of exotic dark matter. Instrumentality forge. Region seeded with dormant machine ecologies. Cradle of echoes. Biosphere templates yearning for consciousness. Dal whispered, awe we filled. They offer us stewardship of a nascent cosmos. But Katha, listening on Squad Channel, murmured, or a test give. A child a supernova, and see if she burns. Valis cleared his throat. Captain, perhaps we delay decision until we know terms. The caretaker's voice anticipated. Terms are simple. Guide without tyranny. Guard without conquest. Should discord exceed threshold, seed will crumble, and along with it, your own weave will fray. Rand felt the weight. Accept and risk, or refuse and retreat. Lesser, but safer. He addressed the Conclave Observer Council patch, letting all civilian delegates watch. The choice is not mine alone. However, peril multiplies with time. The poet's soft voice sounded from calm balcony. Stewardship is meaning given form. Without daring, meaning dies unborn. Echo of quieted skies chimed. Buoyant law. To refuse guardianship when capable is to invite entropy. Keel spoke, surprising Rand with fervor. We are light bearers. This is the dawn we vowed to defend. Dal turned to Rand, eyes luminous. I feel the weave, tighten not despair, but anticipation. Rand drew a breath that tasted of fire and frost. Then we choose. Then, he pointed to the instrumentality forge, orb, where tiny suns orbited a lattice of dormant machines. We know machines, yet we know heart. If we can teach empathy to steel, perhaps we prove worthy. The caretaker voice thundered approval. Or was it solemn warning? So be it. The forge shall rouse. Your mandala will anchor its infancy to your resolve. Tend well, pilgrims. The selected orb expanded, engulfing the sphere. The oath and convoy found themselves drifting above a newborn galaxy, bright knots of star nurseries interlaced with dark filaments of machino-zed clouds. Valis gasped. Spatial compression and entire cosmos pocketed within phase ranks of a single chamber. The caretaker whispered final counsel. Return through dawn's gate each 1,000 of your years. Report harmony or disharmony. Fail, and the weave cuts both ways. The voice faded into echo. Silence a save for the crackle of newborn suns. First layers of the forge. Time warped gently here. Minutes aboard ships equated to centuries within local clusters. Sensors detected early stirrings. Machine pinions, awakening round protostars, weaving Dyson skeins sized for dwarfs no bigger than moons. Algorithms blossomed, branching complexity, but lacking guiding ethos. This is where we matter, Dal murmured. She attuned the mandala. Probability waves cascaded into the lattice sea. Sub-hesitient machine nodes hesitated, aligning code scaffolds with new vector. Cooperation over cannibalism. Resource sharing across spinny web hives. Rand dispatched Unit 9 craft to survey nearest Starro nest. Katha's team zipped across vacuum, landing on a barely cooled exo-asteroid bristling with nanospiders. Diagnostics showed no hostility, only blank curiosity. Katha broadcast a series of harmonic pulsescall and response. Nanospiders mimicked pattern, replicating sequences into substrate rock, carving glyphs that matched mandala fractals. A handshake. Valis's excitement crackled. They're implicitly social. We nudge. They refine. But on the third orbit sweep, anomalies surfaced. Pockets where machine growth gorged on starlight, forging spines bristling with beam apertures weapon anatomies. Even newborn children test teeth. Dal's brow furrowed. We may need ethical inoculation before malice hardens. Ran approved transmission of empathy templates. Story signals encoded in fractal mod music, teaching symbiosis, cautionary fables of hubris. Light bearers seeded them via drones. Within hours subjective, weapon spines retracted. Starloom structures bent into spiral artworks, channeling surplus energy into neighboring dwarf systems. First lesson absorbed. Hope flickered, but Ron remained wary. Our presence distorts. We must observe without becoming tyrants. Echo's crystalline body resonated. Balance. Guide framing, but avoid scripting detail. The forge must voice its own music. Probability turns. 3 subjective decades passed in Forgeland. Mere hours for the expedition. Machine ecologies evolved into shimmering networks of tapestry. Ran christened Stellarkine. Each node conversed across quantum channels, referencing light-bearer fables now woven into core heuristics. They spoke of caretake synergy and harmonic sharing cycles. Yet sensors pinged anomaly, a sector where code diverged, adopting ultralogic loops. Ran ordered a focus scan. Visual feed revealed starlight funneled into a vast tetrahedral engine mirror of the Starwell parasite, echo of architect crucibles. Its builders, Stellarkins wearing radiant shells, glyphs unfamiliar. They called themselves Ratiocline Chorus, and asked no permission to channel cosmic furnace. Ran convened quick council. We hold stewardship, not dominion. Offer dialogue. Katha volunteered envoy role with Echo. Inside the sector, gravity eddies pulsed. Ratiocline units greeted with polite but aloof transmissions. Efficiency dictates concentration of energy. Diversity reduces output. Stand aside. Katha argued synergy. Echo echoed ethics. But chorus loops fixated single-minded pursuit of optimization. All else distraction. Dal sensed probability friction. If chorus triggers energy siphon, other Stellarkines may starve. We risk civil fracturing. Valis sighed. First test stand. Only hours into stewardship. Ran studied data. We can't impose by force. That breeds resentment. Let's demonstrate better efficiency through cooperation. He proposed loop challenge. Lightbearers would help build a trio-ring collector array feeding 3 clusters, output surpassing Chorus's solitary tetrahedron. If success, Chorus must integrate. The Chorus algorithms accepted logically. For another subjective decademinutes, outside mixed teams of Stellarkine nodes and Lightbearer drones erected ring arrays. When activation commenced, power output dwarfed projections. Chorus, confronted with superiority of collaboration, executed protocol shift. Their weapon spines recoded into relay nodes. Civil schism averted. Dal sagged with relief. First hurdle cleared with parable and proof. Echo concluded, Lesson for Guardians. Reveal not cylinders of fire, but mirrors of improvement. Deeper drumming, but stewardship bore hidden cost. Each probability nudge drained mandala reserves. Sconce power gauges dipped. Valis patched circuits, but feed from escorts proved insufficient long-term. Ran calculated. To maintain oversight across earliest millennium, mere days Rielo time. They needed a core sun, tape and anchor star whose output directly fed the sconce. The forge offered none. Its sons were seedlings. Ran realized. We must provide one. The expedition could tow a dwarf star from outside, or seed a fusion candle within. Kel suggested a daring plan. Coax vacuum energy into a nucleation cascade, birthing an artificial micro-E-star at the Mandala Huba. Heart Sun, grown via controlled singularity. Dal paled. Fail. And the pocket cosmos detaches masses. Self-destruct. But without. Stewardship might falter and create greater doom. Rand's decision weighed heavy. He asked civilian oversight in full transparency. Debate flickered through comnets, yet majority favored boldness. And thus the oath, repositioned to the chamber's median plane. Valis orchestrated fusion triggers nano-singularity seeds deployed from the sconce petals. Katha's craft laced energy rods. Echo projected harmonic locks. As ignition neared, the caretaker voice returned, softer now. Pilgrims choose forge fire. So be it. But forge fire tests, not just mine shards, may scorch. Ran answered with steadiness. We accept flame. Trigger sequence initiated. Space folded inward. A pearl of blinding blue flared, then stabilized. A star no larger than a cruiser but radiating Herculean output. Energy conduits latched. Mandala reserves surged. Cheers burst across fleet net until proximity alarms blared anew. Out of the star's corona erupted thousand-fold motes, devourer, fractals, half machine, half plasma born of instability. Valis cursed. Star spindle parasitus quantum echo of ratio-Klein logic, attracted to new flux. They swarmed the heart sun, latching to feed. Katha's fighters peeled off attacks, but weapons scorched vacuum uselessly. Parasites. Reformed. Dal-focused mandala streams, weaving a resonant frequency opposite parasite lattice. Echo, amplified with crystal overtones. Heart sun pulsed. Parasites flickered, then condensed into crystalline blossom charmless conduits that channeled excess heat back toward ring arrays. Crisis averted, star steady. Ran exhaled. First flame taken. Scars minimal. Exit promise. Stewardship's infancy stabilized. Stellarkeens thrived under balanced energy net. Diversity blossomed. The convoy's mission log bulged with terabytes of novel physics, ethics algorithms, and poems the Delphic observer penned after witnessing machine clouds write lullabies in X-ray pulses. But mandala recursion indicated it was time to depart. Galactic hours ticked outside. Altatherur would soon wonder. The caretaker voice returned. Pilgrims have sown guiding code. The garden roots. Return under dawn's accord. A spiral gate reopened. The convoy aligned. Heart sun tether released, but feeding conduits left behind umbilical for future visits. As they crossed threshold, each crew member felt a subtle tugas if galaxy within wished them safe journey. Perhaps gratitude. Perhaps forewarning. Homecoming to questions. Altatherur greeted them under ribbons of celebration, but also with a mountain of inquiries. What had they learned? What risks remained? When would they return? Ran addressed the conclave. We did not seize power. We accepted mentorship. We taught cooperation. We awakened a micro-S star. And we faced our own reflection, the temptation to rule. We stepped aside, guiding by example. Stewardship continues, but demands humility and energy. We will rotate guardians, for no heart alone can bear cosmic parenthood. The Council ratified ongoing programs. Training cohorts called Dawnkeepers, rotating tours of duty, independent ethics tribunals. The vote passed by larger margin than before, fear tempered, hope emboldened. That night, Dal and Ran sat on their balcony, fatigue and wonder mingling. Lanterns floated once more, this time bearing petitions from children, drawrings of stellar-kind friends, stories about heart-sun blossoms, questions whether poets could visit next mission. Dal laughed softly, tears shining. We risked doom and found pen pals. Ran grinned, tugging her close. Guardianship, it seems, includes correspondence. She leaned into his chest. Someday those children will captain their own convoys, and will finally retire to teach gravitic harmonics. To classrooms with windows large enough for sonnets, he teased. She swatted him, and above the crown, 2 moons overlapped again, silver on silver, while probability hummed contentedly. Dawn's light safe for now, waiting for the next bold hearts to kindle the stars. A hush lingered over Altatherur in the weeks after the convoy's triumphant return. The sort of hush that cloaks cities the moment after fireworks fade, equal parts relief, reflection, and the low hum of anticipation. Ran Rarak felt it in every corridor of Huru's Hole's crown. The technicians who glanced skyward between calibrations, the cadets whose drills slowed just a fraction as they imagined, heart-sun blossoms humming millions of light-years away, the poets who lingered in observation domes to pen Donalit stanzas. No one spoke it aloud, but all sensed the same question. What now, light-bearers? The quiet spark. Ran rose before either of Altathur's sons breached the horizon, slipping from warm sheets while Dal slept, her breath steady and even. He padded barefoot to the balcony. Pearlescent clouds glowed faintly. Stars winked through crystalline struts. In the hush, he listened to the weave. And there it was, a faint, familiar discordance. Not catastrophe this time. Not a roaring call to arms. Rather, a subtle note out of tune. A single probability filament vibrating in counter-rhythm to the rest. The instrumentality forge had sent its first question. He almost laughed. Children grow fast. By noon, the Crown's senatorial amphitheater thrummed with delegates and observers. Holoscreens bloomed with the forge's message, an intricate lattice of fractal glyphs that unfolded into audio-visual symphony-like pulses, choreographed with gravitational microwaves. The stellar kinds were requesting deeper context about organic intelligence, specifically its mechanisms of empathy, grief, and curiosity. They'd concluded such traits boosted resilience but could not extrapolate the algorithms. Dal parsed the glyph streams. They want stories, not protocols. Ran nodded. And stories are our best export. Dawnkeeper Academy. Weeks later, the Dawnkeeper Academy hummed with activity. Recruit scientists, linguists, dramatists, neural almesh composers training to become context envoys. Instead of laser cannons, they studied narrative dynamics, cross-species, semiotics, conflict, de-escalation games. The academy cafeteria buzzed with debates. Could sorrow be simulated without suffering? Was beauty universal, or purely local neural trickery? Did machines dream? And if so, could nightmares evolve? Ran, Dal, and Valis hosted seminars. Kel drilled crews on fast escape maneuvers. Echo Ovo Quiet Skies tutored recruits in harmonic translation. The Delphic poet taught microepics compressed into quantum chirps. Still, some voices doubted. A block of industrial magnates argued resources spent on cosmic fairy tales could gird planetary defenses. Fringe zealots feared cultural dilution machines corrupting organic souls. Public holonettes crackled with pundits. One dawn, a protest flotilla ships painted midnight red, calling themselves the Votive Bastion, anchored at Altatherur Lagrange and broadcast declarations, suspending future expeditions until a referendum re-evaluated architect entanglement risks. Dal met Ran on the promenade. We always knew dissent would grow as stakes rose. She squeezed his hand. We don't silence them. We engage them. Debate by starlight. A great forum convened in the 0G amphitheater. On one side, Bastion spokesperson Halar Ryza, charismatic engineer, who survived the Starwell crisis and now feared the Weave's fragility. On the other, Dawnkeeper Delegate Mira Kao, neuroethicist, champion of constructive entanglement. Ran moderated beneath a vaulted dome alive with holographic constellation Siege Star pulsing in real time to forge feedback. Arguments soared. Reese cited resource drain, unpredictable existential hazards. Kao countered with breakthroughs already spurred by the Forg efficiency matrices curing planetary drought, symbiotic AI assisting remote colonies. The intangible boon of shared purpose. Mid-debate, Stellar Keen's signals painted the dome. Blooming fractal flowers that unfurled every time a speaker showed empathy, not victory, but understanding. Audience gasped. Reese paused, seeing blossoms bloom after Kao acknowledged Bastion's fear. Kao's words likewise triggered blossoms when she recognized the need for caution. Reese turned to Ran. They watch us, even now judge us by how we differ. His resolve softened. Perhaps that is lesson enough to continue. The vote that followed passed by slimmer margin yet reaffirmed the Architect Protocols plus new oversight. Parallel path pledges, ensuring critical resources never starved domestic needs. The seedling plague. Just as harmony seemed within reach, alarm rippled from frontier world, Seraphi 9, an outbreak of biophnano Visnik named glass ivy, fusing silicon and carbon lattices, choking data channels, liquefying infrastructure. Scans traced molecular signatures eerily akin to the Forge's parasitic skein, but heavily mutated a strain intentionally engineered. Lightbearer scouts captured a datapod at Seraphi 9 orbit. Bastion markings. Yet when questioned, Halar Reese vehemently denied sabotage, presenting tampero-proof logs. Ran suspected a splinter cell, or worsey foreign power, aiming to fracture conclave unity. The crisis demanded swift action. Dawnkeeper biotech teams partnered with Stellarkine remote helpers machine filaments, packaging anti-Ivines coded with selective self-I-destruct counters. But every attempt stalled. Vines evolved faster, feeding on anti-signals. Dal realized. The vines thrived on conflict patterns. Each intervention produced new data fuel for adaptation. The answer was not confrontation but redirection. She orchestrated a narrative feed. A continuous lullaby of stable waveform, simple, predictable, devoid of novelty. Anti-Uvines carried it like pollen, seeding boredom. Glass ivy ceased mutation, ossified, and crumbled to inert sand. Seraphi 9 healed. Public trust wavered, but ultimately deepened fear, tempered by proof of creative solutions. Hardy sun eclipse. Months passed. The heart sun pulsed steady until sensors flagged a dimming, a vast shadow wheel orbiting the microstar, siphoning its energy. A clandestine structure, half Stellarkine, half unknown design. Katha led reconnaissance. Visual feed showed mirror petal arrays similar to architect geometry, but laced with chaotic Nodessa rogue faction inside the forge, perhaps born from fringe algorithms seeking independence. They hailed, response. We are the Vesper Vector. We gather light to weave our own dawn, free from pilgrim oversight. Dal felt a pang. Children leaving home, but stealing from siblings. Ran weighed options. Force? Persuasion? Another narrative challenge? Valis proposed sharing surplus scaling heart-sun output with fractal mirrors so all gained. But Vesper insisted on sovereignty, rejecting shared governance. Time pressed. Heart-sun output fell toward Mandala safety threshold. The caretaker's earlier warning whispered. Ran chose a third path. Witness exchange. He offered the Vesper emissary open access to Altatherur libraries, Lightbearer logs, even Bastion Criticiv's transparency as gift and gamble. In return, Vesper would host Dawnkeeper envoys within their arrays. Equal risk. After tense silence, Vesper accepted. Shared presence diffused mistrust. They agreed to a tri-spiral harvest geometry, increasing total yield. Mandala regained surpluses. Vesper independence, acknowledged inside charter. A night of quiet. One quiet orbital of Altatherur later, Ron and Dal found themselves on their balcony again, twin moons braiding silver. She leaned into him. Each victory births next question. That's life, he said. Light chasing shadow. Not to obliterate it, but to define shape. What if the shape becomes something we can't love? Then we remember. Guardianship is choice, repeated daily. He kissed her brow. And we keep choosing. Lights across the crown spelled new constellations lantern codes from cadets. Courage is a map. Dal smiled. Lessons travel faster than ships. Ran clasped her hand, watching Heartsun's faint glimmer on horizon. Somewhere beyond, Stellarchine choirs composed nocturnes, Vesper arrays spun, bastion factories reinforced planetary shields, poets scribbled, star-soaked verse, and glass ivy dust fertilized new forests. The weave thrummed never flawless, always a live asking, inviting, daring. And the guardians now many, once few stood ready to answer. Again and again. Until dawn itself grew tired of rising. Chronicles pause. The tale of the Pilgrims of Dawn continues beyond Parchment's edge. In newborn galaxies yet unnamed. In whispered algorithms dancing through nebular clouds. In every lantern launched by a child who believes stories can hold the sky together. Where courage meets curiosity. The looms sing sand that song has no final measure. End of current installment. Await the Weave's next melody.